My husband died in a car accident, crashing off a cliff and leaving no intact remains, all because he went to buy strawberries for me. I was overwhelmed with grief at the funeral. When a group of debt collectors burst in, it was only then that I found out my husband had tens of millions in debt under his name. With guilt in my heart and tears in my eyes, I took on the debt and decided to fulfill my husband's filial duties. I first donated a kidney to my mother-in-law, who had cancer. Then I sold my own house and car to help pay off part of my husband's debts to ensure my mother-in-law's happiness in her later years and to clear the remaining debts. After slaving away for over a decade, I finally burned out completely. But as I lay dying, her husband, who was supposed to be dead, came home with a beautiful woman. I only just found out that my husband faked his death years ago. When I opened my eyes again, I went back to the day my husband died in a car accident. Honey, just wait at home. You'll get to eat the freshest strawberries this afternoon. It's only because I love you. If you were someone else's husband, you wouldn't be this good. Strawberries are so expensive now. Many pregnant women want to eat them but can't bear to spend the money. My husband, Chen Zicheng, had his back to me as he slipped on his shoes and spoke. Hearing this, I whipped my head around to look at the mirror beside me. The reflection showed a healthy, youthful woman, not someone who had been worn down by creditors. My mother-in-law Feng Qingying and my sister-in-law Chen Zihan. For over a decade, I took a few deep breaths, accepting the reality that I had been reborn in my previous life. Chen Zicheng had also used the excuse of buying me strawberries to guilt-trip me, telling me how good he was to me and how much he loved me. Back then, I was naive and deeply moved. I didn't get to eat the strawberries in the afternoon, but instead got a call from the traffic police. It turned out that Chen Zicheng had a car accident on the road. His vehicle lost control, plunged off a cliff, and exploded, leaving no remains. After searching, the police only found a pinky finger at the funeral. A lawyer walked in, and I learned that I was Chen Zicheng's sole heir. Thinking about how good he was to me, I was in such unbearable pain that I almost wanted to follow Chen Zicheng and leave this world. But before I could do anything, a bunch of lending institutions stormed in demanding money from me, and the total amount added up to over 10 million. While I was hesitating, Feng Qingying and Chen Zihan pointed their fingers at me at the funeral, cursing that if it weren't for my insistence on eating strawberries, Chen Zicheng wouldn't have died, and I became the villain. I also felt deeply guilty, having agreed to repay Chen Zicheng's debts and silently vowing in my heart to fulfill his filial duties. So I sold my premarital property to pay off part of the debt. But then Feng Qingying was diagnosed with kidney failure and could only survive with a transplant too. After matching, it turned out I was a suitable donor, so I lay on the operating table again, donating a kidney with a sense of atonement. The days that followed felt like living in a nightmare. The burden of debt suffocated me, and Feng Qingying and Chen Zihan refused to work, relying on me for support while constantly berating and even physically abusing me. Whenever I didn't do as they wished, they would cry and say, "You killed Zicheng, and now you want to drive us to death too." And so, over a decade passed, the debts were mostly paid off, and I, having burned out, was heading toward death. I wasn't afraid of death at all. Instead, I smiled, thinking that at least when I got to the underworld, I could face Chen Zicheng without any guilt. But before I died, I saw Chen Zicheng walk into the house with a beautiful woman in his arms, and they were holding the hand of a child about 10 years old. The moment she saw me barely clinging to life, the woman frowned at Chen Zicheng. "Didn't you say you were dying? Why call me back when you're still alive? What bad luck?" Chen Zicheng looked at me impatiently, then turned to Feng Qingying and Chen Zihan. "What's going on?" Feng Qingying snorted coldly. "She probably thinks she's something special. I deliberately called you back to make her realize how stupid she's been all these years. Isn't it fun to destroy someone's spirit?" I moved my cracked lips, but couldn't utter a single word. I only felt a surge of blood rushing up, then sank into endless darkness. I pulled myself together and flashed a smile at Chen Zicheng. "Yeah, you're the best. Take care on the road. I'll be waiting for you to come home." After seeing Chen Zicheng off, I immediately went downstairs and bought a lottery ticket for the next week's draw at a shop nearby. The winning numbers on that lottery ticket were a striking coincidence. They were exactly the date of mine and Chen Zicheng's wedding anniversary. I had just learned about the debt at the time, and the TV happened to be broadcasting the lottery results, so it stuck in my mind. Maybe this is fate at work. Clutching the lottery results in my hand, in this life, I will not only break free from Chen Zicheng and make the Chen family pay for what they did in my past life, but more importantly, I will live a brilliant life. 3. What followed was exactly the same as in my past life. I retrieved Chen Zicheng's severed finger and held a Funeral, only this time, instead of the heart-wrenching grief I felt before, I couldn't shed a single tear. By the time most of the relatives and friends had arrived, the show was about to start. I had just picked up a tissue dabbed with essential balm to wipe my eyes when tears suddenly streamed down my face, and I sobbed as I poured out my grief. Zichang, how am I supposed to go on now that you're gone like this? I regret it so much. I knew you were rushing back to see Mom because of her kidney failure, yet I let you drive alone. I should have gone with you. My relatives all chimed in, urging me not to be too upset. I shook my head and said, no, it's all my fault. When Mom called to tell us about her illness, I should have gone with you. I can't just not go just because Mom and my sister don't like me and always scold me. The relatives exchanged bewildered glances, seemingly taken aback by the true nature of Fang Qingying and Chen Zihan behind their backs. What nonsense are you talking about? Chen Zihan's voice came from the doorway, accompanied by Fang Qingying. The two of them knew Chen Zichang's death was faked, so they weren't all that grief-stricken. On top of that, Fang Qingying was feeling unwell, which was why they arrived late. The last thing they expected was to walk in and hear me badmouthing him. Fang Qingying tottered over to me and said, Zichang got into that car accident buying strawberries for you. It was your gluttony that killed him, and now you're blaming it all on me. If Zichang could hear this from beyond the grave, how heartbroken he would be. Chen Zihan sneered, exactly, you're always bossing my brother around to buy you this and that. Strawberries are your favorite fruit too. Right before the accident, he was on the phone with me, saying he was buying fruit for you. For I sobbed, looking guilty. Mom, if it makes you feel better, I can accept what you're saying. That was practically saying nothing at all, especially with my pitiful look. It only made people think the worst. Chen Zihan rushed over and slapped me. What kind of act are you putting on here? You're the one who killed my brother. After receiving that slap, I sprang to my feet with an air of utter indignation. What do you want from me? Zichang fell off the cliff on the only road he had to take to meet you. You keep insisting it was about buying strawberries. What strawberries are there in this season? Even if there were, there's no need to go up the mountain. You can buy them at any supermarket. I'm telling the truth. It's just that in my past life, I was too heartbroken to think much about it. I paused for a moment and continued, besides, neither you nor Mom ever told me about her illness. If it wasn't Zichang who told me, then who else could it be? I've already offered to take the blame for Zichang's death for you. What more do you want? Do I have to die with Zichang too? With that, ignoring everyone's attempts to stop me, I looked as if I was about to slam into a wall and cried out, Zichang, slow down on the road to the underworld. Wait for me. Fang Qingying and Chen Zihan certainly weren't going to let me hit the wall. After all, they were still waiting for me to pay back the money and help treat Fang Qingying's illness. The two of them were scratching their heads in desperation, until finally Fang Qingying had to admit, yes, Zichang got into that car accident because he came to see me. The fault is mine. Chen Zihan also gritted her teeth and said, yes, it's our fault. All the relatives were pointing fingers at Fang Qingying and Chen Zihan, the two of them not daring to lift their heads, so I finally stopped. Isn't this just moral coercion? Anyone can do it. Halfway through the funeral, a lawyer in a suit appeared, holding some documents and asking, excuse me, who is Qin Rulan? 5. Before I could even speak, Fang Qingying and Chen Zihan shouted loudly, over here, Qin Rulan is here. Can hardly wait. After confirming my identity, the lawyer directly produced Chen Zichang's will. According to Mr. Chen Zichang's will, all the deposits under his name are left to you. I looked down at the will in my hands. This paltry sum was nothing to brag about. My premarital assets were far more than this. I glanced toward the door, where a crowd of debt collectors had already gathered, all waiting for me to sign so they could come after me for the money. Fang Qingying urged impatiently, Rulan, just sign it quickly. Once it's done, Zichang will be at ease. Chen Zihan nodded repeatedly, yeah, once you're done signing, we can get on with the funeral. I shook my head and said, I can't take it. What Zichang worried about most before he died must have been Mom and his sister. I'm willing to give up Zichang's inheritance and leave it for Mom's medical treatment. Before Fang Qingying and Chen Zihan could voice their objections, I continued, besides, when Zichang was alive, almost all his income went to support Mom and his sister. I believe that if he were still here today, he would definitely want all of it to be used for Mom's medical treatment. My relatives couldn't help but give me a thumbs up. I felt a bit shy as I signed the document renouncing my inheritance rights. That's the law. since Chen Zicheng's debts were not used for family expenses and I had no knowledge of them. As long as I gave up the inheritance, I naturally wouldn't have to bear his debts. According to inheritance law, if I renounce my inheritance, the next in line to inherit would be Fan Qingying and Chen Zihan. Naturally, the two of them would pass the buck back and forth, with neither willing to take it, but the creditors couldn't wait any longer. Without even letting the two sign, they stormed right in. Chen Zicheng owes so much money, you two have to pay me back. 6. The two were surrounded by creditors. Fan Qingying quickly pointed at me and said, make her pay the money, she has money and a house. She's Chen Zicheng's wife. Confused and bewildered, I grabbed the lawyer I had just spoken to and asked, I've given up my inheritance rights, do I still need to pay off the debt? The lawyer shook his head, that won't be necessary. I sighed and said, Mom, sis, did you make me sign the inheritance papers just now because you already knew about this debt? I thought you had good intentions, but I never expected you to. I didn't continue, but everyone already knew what I was going to say. Chen Zihan pushed the creditor aside and said to me arrogantly, this was originally your joint debt, so of course you have to pay it back. Besides, my brother was. Chen Zihan couldn't finish the sentence, because the original line was that Chen Zicheng died because of me. But after all the fuss I just made, the cause of Chen Zicheng's death had already changed to something else. The lawyer spoke up at the right moment. A joint debt requires both parties' signatures and must be used for shared expenses to be confirmed. As it stands, none of these IOUs bear Ms. Qin's name. Chen Zihan looked as if struck by lightning, fell at my feet, tugged at my pant leg, and cried, sister-in-law, my mom and I simply can't come up with that much money to pay off the debt. Don't you have a house? Sell it and pay off part of it first. What nerve? I looked at her in confusion. Sister, aren't you and Mom living in a house too? It's probably worth more than mine. So why don't you sell your own house? Fan Qingying didn't catch it clearly, only heard that they wanted to sell her house, and immediately shrieked, don't you dare sell my house. If you sell it, where will I live? Do you want me to end up on the streets? 7. No matter what the two said, the creditor remained unmoved, just staring at them and demanding they pay up. The two of them followed my lead, saying they wanted to renounce their inheritance rights. We don't want the inheritance rights, we stand with Qin Rulin, right? We had no idea about our brother's loan either. We're not obligated to repay it. Unfortunately, it's useless. During the time spent preparing for the funeral, I managed to investigate and found that many of Chen Zicheng's loans were guaranteed by Fan Qingying and Chen Zihan, and the two even took a substantial cut from these loans. That's why in my past life, they insisted on faking their deaths and guilt-tripping me into paying off their debts, because if I don't repay the loan, they'll be the ones who have to pay it back. The Chen family completely played me like a fiddle. I was counting the money for them even as they sold me out. Hearing the two claim ignorance, the creditors directly produced screenshots and transaction records of Chen Zicheng's transfers to Fan Qingying and Chen Zihan. The two looked pale with shock. How could you possibly have these things so quickly? It would take ages to investigate through normal channels, but if I helped them, it'd be done in a flash. I stood to the side, wiping my eyes that were swollen from the Vicks VapoRub, and said, Mom, sis, how could you let Zicheng take out a loan like that? I can't help you now. You'll have to pay back that money yourselves. A voice rang out from the crowd. Qin Rulin, you're so vicious. No wonder Zicheng would rather keep a mistress and have an illegitimate child outside than stay with you. Everyone turned around to look, but the speaker was nowhere to be found. What? Zicheng actually betrayed me. Unable to bear this blow, I rolled my eyes and passed out cold. ********. By the time I came to, everything had already been settled. Without me, the fool who was footing the bill, Fan Qingying and Chen Zihan were forced to sign and take on these debts. They also considered asking relatives to persuade me, but at the funeral, the man keeping a mistress made everyone think it was best for me to stay out of this family's affairs. So not only did no one come to speak up for them, but they even kicked them when they were down. A few days later, while I was tidying up at home, Chen Zihan knocked on my door. I didn't give her a warm welcome, considering she was the one who guilt-tripped me the most harshly in my past life. Chen Zihan came in just like before, not even bothering to take off her shoes before plopping down on the sofa. You know, Mom has kidney failure. Now she and I have been kicked out of the house, she's in the hospital, and I have nowhere to stay. I'm planning to move in here. I grunted an acknowledgement. Okay, anyway, I've already sold this house. When the landlord shows up in a few days, I have no idea if the new landlord will let you stay. Maybe my submissive demeanor made Chen Zihan think I'd turned back into that pushover again. She snorted coldly, that's more like it. Let me tell you, Mom already had kidney failure, and being put through the ringer at the funeral made her condition even worse. You and Mom have the same blood type. If you have any conscience at all, you should go get tested for a match with her. I suddenly burst out laughing. Chen Zihan looked at me with confusion. What are you laughing at? I laugh at your naivety. Your brother is having an affair, and you and your mother have been tormenting me in every way possible. What makes you think I'd be willing to help you? Chen Zihan looked at me as if she had seen a ghost. You're twisting the truth. I made a shushing gesture. Stop talking nonsense. Everyone knows who's twisting the truth. Whether your brother went to buy me strawberries or deliberately went up the mountain just to fall to his death, I believe you and your mother know the answer. 9. Chen Zihan had no idea how to argue back against me, and she didn't dare to offend me casually. After all, she still needed me to have a change of heart and help them pay off the debt. Even if I didn't repay the money, she could still mooch off me at my place, making me take care of her every need from food and clothing to daily necessities. As for donating a kidney to Fang Qingying, with her being so selfish, she definitely couldn't care less. After figuring that out, she shot me a glare and went straight into the guest room. Once Chen Zihan was in the guest room, I didn't bother tidying up either. Since the lottery had already been drawn and I was now a multimillionaire, I had no use for these little things anymore. I grabbed my bag, turned around, and left the house, blocking all contact information for Chen Zihan and Fang Qingying. They wouldn't dare make a big scene, afraid someone might discover that Chen Zicheng's death was faked. I cashed in the prize, bought a luxury villa, and moved right in, making up for all the suffering I endured in my past life. I was living it up in style. However, Fang Qingying and Chen Zihan were not so fortunate. According to the private investigator, Fang Qingying's condition has deteriorated rapidly and she has now fallen into a coma. However, due to lack of money and Chen Zihan's refusal to discharge her from the hospital, she can only lie in the hospital corridor, wasting away. Chen Zihan was also kicked out by the new landlord of my old house, and it turned into a huge scene that nearly landed them in the police station. She called me, unleashing a torrent of accusations and tearful complaints, before finally leaving with great reluctance. But I know this is just the beginning. There are more troublesome things waiting for me to deal with. As if answering my thoughts, the nanny brought in 3 guests early that morning. It was Chen Zihan and a man dressed like a lawyer, and beside them stood Chen Zicheng, who had risen from the dead. A smirk curled at the corner of my lips. Chen Zicheng, you finally showed up. All that effort I put into flaunting my wealth wasn't for nothing. 10. The moment Chen Zicheng saw me, he dropped to his knees. He clung tightly to my leg, crying with tears and snot streaming down his face. I steadied myself and said, Zicheng, weren't you supposed to be dead? Chen Zicheng wiped his nose haphazardly on my silk dress. I'm sorry, honey, I was foolish to fake my death, but I regretted it soon after. I missed you so much, so I came back. After saying that, Chen Zicheng tugged at Chen Zihan's skirt. Chen Zihan, who had been staring at the villa since entering, snapped back to attention. Sister-in-law, my brother truly loves you. Mom and I really like you too. Please come back. And seeing how you're living in such a nice house now, paying off my brother's debts must be a breeze for you. Right, I nodded. Yeah, millions in debt is nothing to me now. Funny how they say get promoted, get rich, lose your wife. Well, I lost my husband and got rich instead. All the good luck just landed on me, but I'm not going to pay them off for you, because legally, we're not related anymore. Chen Zicheng heard that and quickly stood up. Lawyer Lu, please talk some sense into my wife. Lawyer Lu cleared his throat. No, Ms. Qin. According to Article 51 of the Civil Code, the marital relationship of a person declared dead is dissolved from the date of the declaration of death. If the declaration of death is revoked, the marital relationship is automatically restored from the date of revocation. Therefore, Mr. Chen Zicheng's marriage with you has now been restored. I gasped in surprise, covering my mouth. Chen Zicheng and Chen Zihan were thrilled to see me backed into a corner, but the moment I spoke my next words, their faces instantly fell. 11. Zicheng, it was only after you died that I realized my so-called perfect marriage was full of lies and infidelity. So after you passed, I chose to remarry. I smiled. After all, the best way to get over a relationship is to start a new one. Chen Zicheng shook his head with a dark face and said, I don't believe you. You must be lying to me. I waved my hand and told the nanny to call my husband Huang Yunan. He was already waiting at the top of the stairs with our marriage certificate in hand, and before the nanny could even go upstairs, he strode down with his long legs. He proudly showed the marriage certificate to Chen Zicheng, grinning as he shook his hand. Brother Chang, it's truly a miracle, the dead can come back to life. Too bad, though, Ruolin and I are already married, so your marriage is null and void. Lawyer Lu nodded awkwardly. Yes, if someone remarries, the previous marriage is terminated. Chen Zicheng and Chen Zihan were stunned. They had thought that after returning, a simple plea from them would soften my heart, and I'd obediently pay back the money, even if I didn't. As long as the marriage continued, they could still throw their weight around and lord it over my household, but they never imagined that I would get married so quickly. Chen Zicheng said sarcastically, I loved you so much and did everything you asked. How could you get married while my body is still warm? Before I could say anything, Huang Yunan looked as if he'd seen a ghost. What, you're a ghost? Chen Zicheng was at a loss for words, but Chen Zihan gritted her teeth and said, you slut, you must have been cheating on him all along to jump into another relationship so seamlessly. She glanced at Huang Yunan ingratiatingly, smoothed her hair, and said, handsome, she's fooled you, she's only after your money, you should divorce her right away. 12 Huang Yunan waved his hand and said, you've misunderstood, this house isn't mine, it's Ruolin's. What, how is that possible? Chen Zicheng and Chen Zihan said in unison. Seeing the look on their faces, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Yeah, I won the lottery after you died, so that's how I got the money. I sighed. It's fate, I suppose. If you hadn't faked your death in a moment of foolishness, this life would all be yours now, and I could easily pay off all your debts. I pointed at the Land Rover in the driveway and said, I remember you saying this car is every man's dream ride. You were so close to making that dream come true. If you could see Chen Zicheng and Chen Zihan's guts right now, they'd definitely be green with envy. Chen Zicheng knew he couldn't get anything out of me through legal means. His eyes darted around as he said, honey, I know I'm deeply guilty and don't deserve your forgiveness, but we've known each other for 10 years and been married for 3. There's still some bond between us. I'm not asking you to pay off my debts now, just please save my mom. After all, my mom is your mom too. The woman you've been calling mom for 3 years is about to pass away. Can you really bear to let that happen? I nodded. Yes, I can. I still remember what your mother said to me. Don't think that just because you married into my family, you're truly a part of the Chen household. Don't you dare act up under my roof. I'm not your real mother, and I have no reason to spoil you. Chen Zicheng and Chen Zihan were about to keep talking when I shushed them and said, honestly, if you really want to be filial, you'd be better off showing some care to your dying mother right now, or hurry up and get tested for matching. After all, organ donation success rates are much higher among family members. With that, I smiled and told the maid to show them out. 13 As the 3 of us walked out the door, Huang Yunan gave me a thumbs up. Ruolin, how did you know that Chen Zicheng would definitely come back for you? Huang Yunan's demeanor was nothing like it had been just moments ago. Instead, she sat languidly on the sofa, exuding a seductive air. I slipped off my dress and squeezed onto the couch with Huang Yunan, wearing only my top. I know Chen Zicheng too well. Whether Chen Zihan dies or Fang Qingying dies, he'd never come back. He'd definitely choose to take the money and run off with his mistress, but if he does that, he'll never be able to make up for the harm he's caused me. So I deliberately spread the word that I struck it rich and hid the fact that I'm married, just waiting for him to walk right into my trap. Huang Yunan leaned on my shoulder and said, oh my god, Ruolin, you're amazing. If I didn't have a boyfriend, I'd totally want to marry you. I rolled my eyes. Huang Yunan is my classmate and neighbor. We've always been very close, especially since we share the same sexual orientation. That's precisely why he agreed right away when I proposed marriage. I had long known about the law and regulation that Attorney Lu mentioned. If I didn't completely get rid of Chen Zicheng, he would remain a ticking time bomb hanging over my head, and I would never be able to rest easy. Huang Yunan snatched the grapes from my hand. That's not right. What if Chen Zicheng runs off again? I pointed at my phone with my chin. Don't worry, I've notified every single one of the creditors. At this thought, I smiled. Not only that, I even got someone to give him advice on how to make money. Huang Yunan shook his head. Ruolin, you're terrifying. I don't dare divorce you anymore. I'm afraid you'll destroy me. Yeah, I've been sharp since I was a kid and never let a grudge slide, but last time around, I was so blinded by love that I couldn't see or hear straight, letting those 3 ingrates run circles around me. 14 On the advice of a well-meaning person, Chen Zicheng didn't disappear again. Instead, he and Chen Zihan gathered all the creditors together. As for what exactly was said or done, I have no idea. All I know is that we went in as two, but came out as one. Chen Zihan vanished without a trace in the previous life. After Chen Zicheng disappeared, Chen Zihan nearly tortured me to death. After I donated a kidney to Fang Qingying, when I was in excruciating pain, she not only ignored me completely but also demanded that I do her laundry and cook for her, and even wait on her hand and foot in the middle of the night. Her being so fussy and demanding, I got infected several times and nearly died. After I recovered, Chen Zihan knew full well that our family was deep in debt, yet she still demanded that I buy her expensive cosmetics and luxury goods. It's not that I didn't resist or refuse, but whenever I did, she would just hit me. I'm physically weak and no match for her at all. She also said that I deserved all of this, and that if it weren't for me, Chen Zicheng would definitely have bought it for her. When I made an excuse about not having money, Chen Zihan even suggested that I go out and sell my body. You're good looking and young anyway, so make some money while you can. Mom and I are counting on you to support us. So my hatred for Chen Zicheng is far less than what I feel for Fang Qingying and Chen Zihan. After all, he simply vanished without a trace. It's Fang Qingying and Chen Zihan who have been the ones tormenting and hurting me all along. But Fang Qingying is already on her last legs without my donated kidney. I don't even need to lift a finger, so now I'm using Chen Zihan's own ideas against him, and I think it's working out pretty well. But one Chen Zihan is clearly not enough to give Chen Zicheng a long breather. Soon, the kind-hearted person came up with another idea for Chen Zicheng. 15. A few days later, I received an invitation from Chen Zicheng. Of course, I didn't want to go, but his message to me was, if you don't come, I'll ruin your reputation. Only then did I go to the meeting out of fear. Chen Zicheng chose an outdoor spot for our meeting. The area was deserted, with nothing but a few bushes around and barely anyone in sight. He made me throw my bag far away, put my phone on the table, and only sat down after making sure there were no recording devices on me. Or in my shoes. I frowned and looked at Chen Zicheng with disdain. What do you want from me? Chen Zicheng didn't say a word. Instead, he simply handed me some evidence and a recorded phone call. I looked at him in confusion as his expression grew darker. Chen Zicheng seemed to find it immensely satisfying and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Did you really think I was that stupid, that I couldn't come up with any ideas? These so-called pieces of evidence supposedly prove that I was aware of Chen Zicheng's debt situation, including his faked death, and even mentioned that my lottery ticket was purchased by Chen Zicheng. I was trembling with rage. These are all fake. I had no idea about any of this. Those recordings and chat logs aren't even mine. Chen Zicheng nodded. That's right, it's fake. The recording is AI generated, but as long as I post this stuff online and put my dying mother in the live stream, everyone will believe me, not you. After all, who would choose to believe someone like you, a woman who remarries before her husband is even dead? Once everyone believes me, I'll take you to court. With this big of a mess and your shady actions, the worst the court will do is order you to split the debts and your lottery winnings with me. By then, you'll be broke and your reputation ruined. That handsome husband of yours will definitely divorce you. 16. I struggled to calm myself down. So, what do you want? Seeing that I had taken the bait, Chen Zicheng said, 2 million, 1 million I need to pay off my debts, and the other million I need to live on. Listen, don't rush to say no. What I'm asking for isn't much at all, and if you hadn't refused to give me the money, my sister wouldn't have. What do you mean? Nothing will happen, I pressed. Chen Zicheng didn't answer directly, simply saying, what do you think is the fastest way for a woman to make money? But then again, this is what she should have done anyway. As my sister, it's only right for her to pay these dues. I seemed startled by him and paused for a moment. I can give you the money, but all my funds are in the bank. I can't get that much out at once. I can only give you 1 million for now. Chen Zicheng hadn't expected things to be this easy, and his voice even sounded a bit giddy. You have to give me the full amount within a month. I nodded in agreement but asked him to delete the evidence in front of me. Chen Zicheng called me an idiot. How can I delete it without getting the money? Just pay up quickly, and I'll delete it naturally. But I still wasn't at ease. Amid my hesitation and inner conflict, Chen Zicheng took the initiative to write me an agreement, promising that once he got the money, he would delete everything and never bother me again. Holding the agreement, I finally felt relieved and immediately transferred 1 million to Chen Zicheng on the spot. After Chen Zicheng left with the money, a man in a green ghillie suit crawled out From the bushes, grumbling, he took off the suit and handed me the action camera attached to his phone. "Rulin, I did all this for you, so you have to go shopping with me properly." I nodded and blew him a kiss, but we still need to go to the police station to report this first. 17. As a woman being blackmailed, I was completely drained of strength, practically hanging on to Huang Yunan. Huang Yunan dramatically pleaded with the police officers to make sure justice was served for me. He had a silver tongue and explained everything clearly in just a few words. I knew Chen Zicheng was up to no good, so I deliberately followed my wife there. Little did I expect to capture the entire blackmail process on camera, with irrefutable evidence and an astronomical amount of money involved. The police immediately froze Chen Zicheng's bank account used for receiving payments and quickly took him into custody. When the police arrested him, he looked completely bewildered. "I haven't broken the law, I just owe money. I'm just a deadbeat, that's all." It was only when we got to the police station that he realized I was the one who had reported him, and he became even more furious. "How could you go back on your word? How could you do this to me? This isn't extortion, she's my wife, and her money is mine." Huang Yunan spoke up at the right moment. "Officer, he's dead. I married my wife after he died, so their marriage was already null and void." The police wanted me to say something, but I suddenly went crazy and screamed, "Don't sell me. I don't want the money anymore. He'll sell me to Africa to be a." I haven't finished speaking, but the police sensed a major case brewing. Under their repeated reassurances, I reluctantly revealed that Chen Zihan had been sold to Africa. I didn't know about it at first, but today he was being evasive, which made me uneasy. So I hired a private detective to look into it, and this is what they found. I threw myself into Huang Yunan's arms, sobbing, while Chen Zicheng clenched his teeth, utterly helpless. "I've roughly calculated that the amount of extortion is huge and the circumstances are severe. At the very least, they could get 5 years. As for human trafficking, that's a much bigger deal, probably around 10 years." 18. Due to the large number of cases and the time needed to investigate the evidence, Fang Qingying never lived to see Chen Zicheng's verdict. She died alone and desolate in her rented room. It is said that her body was only discovered after it began to decompose, and the neighbor's dog had been barking day and night. In the end, no one came to claim her body. Being the kind soul I am, I took her to the crematorium, brought her ashes home, and then promptly dumped them all down the drain. A piece of shit is best off with its own kind. During the past 6 months, the police also collaborated with authorities from multiple countries in an attempt to rescue Chen Zihan and the mistress. The mistress was rescued and brought back to the country, heavily pregnant with a vacant stare. Rumor has it she's riddled with illnesses, and no one even knows who the father of the child is, but at least she's still alive. Chen Zihan wasn't so lucky. Word has it that not long after going abroad, her fiery temper got her tortured to death. I wonder if, at the moment of her death, she harbored any resentment toward her beloved brother. 6 months later, Chen Zicheng was sentenced, but the situation was more serious than I had imagined, because not only had he sent Chen Zihan away, but he had also gotten rid of his mistress on the side. So, with multiple sentences combined, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. With his handsome, fair-skinned, and good-looking appearance, it goes without saying that he wouldn't have an easy time behind bars, not to mention how heinous his crimes are. 19. 2 years went by, with my revenge finally fulfilled and life being too good to me. I took it upon myself to pay Chen Zicheng a goodwill visit. It had only been 2 years since they last met, but Chen Zicheng looked even more haggard and aged than in his previous life. Over a decade later, he was so emaciated that his features were barely recognizable, his face covered with wounds of various sizes, and his wrists scarred all over. Most appeared to be bite marks. One part of his ear was even missing. It was clear that life had not been kind to him. Chen Zicheng looked at me with despair in his eyes. "What are you here for? To laugh at me?" I shook my head. "I came to tell you that your mother died at home, and I went to collect her remains, but I accidentally dropped her ashes into the toilet." Chen Zicheng showed little reaction. "Oh, I see." I hummed an acknowledgement and said, "Let me tell you something you don't know. For instance, the person who gave you the advice and led you to make all these mistakes, do you know who that is?" Chen Zicheng finally reacted, his gaze sharp as he looked at me. "How did you know someone was giving me advice? Was it you? You did it on purpose, didn't you?" I smiled but didn't answer. Instead, I winked at him, making it clear, "You're spot on." He couldn't help but sneer. "Do you think your life is so happy? Let me tell you, I've already found out. your husband is a fucking gay, he's only after money, sooner or later, he'll dump you and leave you with a disease. I answered the same as Chen Ziqiang. I know. Our marriage is fake to begin with, I married him on purpose because I knew you weren't dead. As for the money, you don't need to worry, we signed a prenup. Silly. Upon hearing this, Chen Ziqiang spat out another mouthful of blood and passed out. This was something Fang Qingying taught me. Strike to kill, strike to break the spirit, it really works, and it feels damn good. End of the full text. That's all for the first story, stay tuned, the next one is even more exciting. I was live streaming an antique appraisal show and connected with an outdoor fishing streamer. He pulled a bead out of a fish's belly and asked me if it was valuable. I was shocked. This is a living corpse sky bead, throw it back into the water quickly. The bullet comments all call me a jealous freak, they don't know. 10,000 corpses form one pearl. Without this bead to suppress them, tens of thousands of floating corpses in the water would all crawl ashore tonight. 1. My name is Moronyu. I'm an archaeology student at Jing University and a well-known live-streaming influencer. In my spare time, I host live-stream treasure appraisal sessions online to earn some extra cash. That day, I opened the livestream as usual, and suddenly an excited face popped right up in front of the camera. Streamer, take a look at this, what a gem I've got here. I was startled. The person on the other side moved a bit farther from the camera, and only then did I get a clear look. It was a scruffy middle-aged man. He had dark skin, a high-bridged nose, and was holding a bright green bead in one hand. Look, is this made of jade? The man smiled, his eyes almost brighter than the jade beads in his hand. The comments section immediately became lively. Oh, if it isn't my bro Shing, right? Isn't brother Shing out fishing? Why is he here appraising treasures? Haha, the person above knows brother Shing. I just came from his livestream. Brother Shing hit the jackpot. He caught a fish with a jade bead in its belly, and it looks like a rare one. Wow, what luck. The man across from him was Li Dashing, a famous outdoor streamer. He loved fishing in the wild, and every time he was at a fishing spot, he'd analyze the weather, water conditions, and various other factors with his fellow anglers. Brother Shing has incredibly professional theoretical knowledge, but his luck is terrible. Everyone says he puts on a show with all that skill, yet the biggest fish he's ever caught weighed just over 2 taels. His most impressive catch so far was spending 4 hours to land 3 tiny whitebait. People laugh at him, but he never gets discouraged, he's always smiling, and his livestream has always been very popular. No wonder brother Shing could never catch fish before, all his good luck was saved up for this. This bead is glacier jadeite, imperial green, worth at least over 100,000. Don't listen to the guy upstairs, he's talking nonsense, that's no little bead, his is as big as a pigeon egg. Cut it open and you'll get 2 faceted pieces, worth at least a few million. 2. Watching the chat. On the bullet comments, brother Shing squinted his eyes, reached up to scratch his head, and grinned from ear to ear. Haha, no, I'll have to ask streamer Morong to help me figure out the exact price. Brother Shing placed the jade bead in his palm and aimed it at the camera. The sunlight outdoors was brilliant, and the emerald green jade bead shimmered with a glossy sheen. Upon closer inspection, extremely fine grains could be seen within the beads. However, the internal structure was very compact, and the base was exceptionally clean. Cup some water in your hand and put the bead in it so I can see. Shungu obediently cupped a handful of water in his palm. The moment the emerald green bead touched the water, it was almost invisible, like a clear jelly, barely distinguishable. If not for that hint of green, I couldn't help but admire it. That's impressive. The older generation used to describe glass-grade jadeite like this. Take a basin of clear water, drop the glass-grade jadeite in, and it would completely disappear. However, color can suppress the clarity in jadeite, as the color blocks the passage of light. Your vibrant green is rare, it even has a fluorescent glow. This isn't just your standard ice-type full green, it's close to glass-type, which makes it extremely valuable. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, really? So, streamer, how much is this worth? Brother Shing couldn't help but burst into laughter, and the viewers in the bullet comments were green with envy. I'm a jade dealer, brother Shing, I'll take these beads. Final offer, 880,000. Ha, who do you think you're fooling with that price? Bro Shing, I'll double it, 168 million, that's sincere enough, right? Just give me the address, and I'll come find you right now. Some jewelers started raising their prices to buy beads, and brother Shing couldn't stop grinning. I was also full of envy, staring for a while, when suddenly something felt off. A remarkably thin white streak flickered through the center of the bead. My eyes flew wide open. Countless Extremely fine white threads wriggled through the beads like living things, a bead of deep green, with threads of white drifting through. A legend flashed through my mind, and my face instantly turned pale. 3. Wait, Sheng, where did you catch that fish? Xinggu was proudly showing off the bead right in front of the camera. When he heard my question, he stepped back a few paces to reveal the full background. I'm at Fuxian Lake. What's up, Sister Morong? You're not thinking of trying your luck here too, are you? Ha 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 ha. Fuxian Lake is the deepest freshwater lake in Yunnan, with an average depth of 90 meters and a maximum depth of over 150 meters. Locally, it has another chilling nickname, the Millennium Corpse Fault. The water of Fuxian Lake is exceptionally clear, and it looks shallow on the surface, but the terrain drops off sharply near the shore, leading to frequent drownings among swimmers. While retrieving bodies, people discovered an ancient city at the bottom of the lake. Later, CCTV organized 3 underwater expeditions. Although they didn't release the underwater footage, they confirmed the discovery of extensive ancient architectural walls beneath the water. The folk tales are even more outlandish. It is said that there are countless standing corpses underwater, male bodies leaning forward, female bodies leaning back, swaying with the undercurrents. A truly horrifying sight. If it had been somewhere else, I might have been mistaken. If this bead is in Fuxian Lake, then the legend is most likely true. I let out a sigh. Sheng, listen to me. This isn't a jade bead, it's a living corpse bead. This is an extremely rare object, a pearl formed from 10,000 corpses. When corpses are trapped together in one place, one of them will absorb the corpse energy and resentment generated by the others, nurturing this pearl into being. It's the only thing that can absorb and contain the endless corpse energy. If the pearl is gone for just 12 hours, all those bodies underwater will rise and come ashore, and then there'll be no stopping it. Throw the pearl back in right now. What? A living corpse celestial bead? That sounds terrifying. Xingji, throw the bead back now. Yeah, I've watched Morong's streams before. She's really good. You should listen to her and throw the bead back now. My longtime fans all urged Brother Xing to drop the beads immediately, and the smile on his face instantly froze. For what the hell? You heard someone quote 168 million. And you told them to throw the bead into the lake. Streamer, are you just jealous or what? Right, that's just crazy. What's with all this zombie nonsense? So random, you guys don't get it. I'm a local here. There's actually a legend about floating corpses in Fuxian Lake. Exactly, tens of thousands of corpses crawling up. What would that even look like? Just thinking about it freaks me out. Forget the money. My life's more important. Hilarious. You call 168 million nothing, can you even earn $1 million in your whole life? The comments section erupted into a heated argument, leaving Brother Xing looking awkward. He fidgeted with the bead in his hand, his gaze darting around uneasily. Miss Morong, you claim this is a corpse-reviving heavenly bead, but do you have any other proof? You can't just say one sentence and make me toss 168 million down the drain. My face was stern. Do you know why this is called the living corpse bead? It's alive, but anything it touches turns into a corpse. That fish you caught, was it dead? Well, Brother Xing's pupils contracted, and the live comments immediately responded, yeah, I just watched the live stream. It's definitely a dead fish. Its eyes are rolled back, and half of its gills are rotten. A dead fish hooked cleanly. Pack up and leave immediately. That's the rule in your fishing circle, isn't it? Every angler knows that a perfect mouth hook means the hook catches the fish right in the center of its upper jaw. If you reel in a dead fish with such a perfect hook, it suggests something underwater actively hooked the fish for you. A bad omen. You should leave that spot immediately, or else something bad will happen. Fine, I just won't fish anymore. That doesn't prove anything, does it? Brother Xing clearly didn't want to give up the bead, so I patiently kept persuading him. Brother Xing, anything touched by the living corpse heavenly bead will turn into a corpse, not just fish. If you hold on to it, you won't survive past tomorrow. Look at your palms. Isn't the skin already pale and wrinkled? Once midnight passes, you'll be no different from those corpses floating in the water. 5. Brother Xing glanced down at his palm, startled, but quickly regained his composure. My hands have been soaking in water this whole time. Isn't it normal for them to get wrinkled? Yeah, Brother Xing, don't bother with her. That streamer's just jealous. Can't stand seeing others make money. Look, I'm not gonna beat around the bush either. Final offer, 2 million. You're at Fuxian Lake, right? I'll fly over in an hour. Wait for me. Brother Xing didn't say a word, but judging by his expression, he was clearly wildly tempted. I'm getting anxious. you really can't take this bead, brother Sheng, oh, my signal's terrible, what did you say? The picture keeps freezing. The next second, brother Sheng actually cut off the livestream. I tried calling back, but no one answered, and I was so furious I couldn't help but curse. Xiaomoyu, we're screwed, something huge has happened. Xiaomoyu is a friend of mine and the only living heir of the geomancer tradition in ancient times. A geomancer originally referred to any practitioner of feng shui, but later came to specifically denote a master who could read the stars. Xiaomoyu is skilled in astrological divination for locating burial sites, as well as exorcising ghosts and capturing demons, the most formidable person I have ever encountered. At that moment, she was sitting in the yard, staring eagerly as my grandfather brought out a large pot of lamb spine. Hee, sect leader Qiao, this meat's been stewing for 2 hours, smells good, doesn't it? Xiaomoyu sniffled and rubbed his hands together in excitement. I'm completely hooked by the aroma. Seeing me rush out of the room with a panicked look, Xiaomoyu's expression shifted dramatically. What are you doing? Nothing's going to stop me from eating this lamb spine hot pot. Stop eating living corpse beads, tens of thousands of floating corpses. We need to book flights to Yunnan right now. 6. I grabbed Xiaomoyu's arm, but Grandpa immediately slapped my hand away. What's the rush, you crazy girl, always making such a fuss day in and day out. What's this about a zombie celestial bead? While explaining what had just happened, I looked down and opened my phone to book a flight. The next available flight was in an hour and a half. Just enough time to get there. I was buying tickets when Grandpa suddenly burst out laughing, ghostly. Living corpse beads, ha 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 ha, your great-grandfather made all that up to fool people. You're a college student, how can you believe everything you hear? He laughed while patting Xiaomoyu on the shoulder. Look at my silly girl, isn't this hilarious? Ha 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 ha, Chief Qiao, why aren't you laughing? Xiaomoyu's face darkened. Take a guess, Grandpa, are you just not the type to laugh? Xiaomoyu let out a few fake he laughs, then walked over and picked up the pot of lamb spine, her face full of anxiety. Let's go, what are you waiting for? Jiang Haoyan is parking in the lot right now, hurry up and grab your ID. Carrying a porcelain plate as big as a wash basin, Xiaomoyu didn't mind the heat at all, holding it with both hands. She ran swiftly without spilling a single drop of the brimming soup. Grandpa was full of praise. Tisk, look at them, every move they make is pure skill. Have you been practicing the Bajuanjin like I told you? First, build up your qi and blood circulation, get a solid foundation, and then you can learn a bit more. Grandpa, stop talking nonsense, you go get your ID card, and I'll pack the luggage. I turned and ran upstairs. Grandpa stood frozen for a few seconds before snapping out of it, then clapped his hands together. Holy mother of, could that corpse sky bead actually be real? No way. We have to bring the universe mirror. 7. By the time we grabbed our things and ran to the parking lot, Jiang Haoyan had already backed the car out. Over here, Xiaomoyu rolled down the car window from the back seat, holding a large porcelain plate in one hand and a lamb bone in the other, gnawing on it with great relish. I've been stargazing lately and spotted 4 planets in alignment. Sigh, I never thought it would come true so soon. I asked curiously, what's a 4-star alignment? The 4 stars refer to Saturn, the Moon, Venus, and Jupiter gathering together, forming a straight line in the low southwestern sky. When the 4 stars align, it's called Datang, a sign that evil forces will rise, the virtuous will worry, and the wicked will flourish. An extremely ominous omen. That's so unlucky. Sect leader Qiao, will something bad happen today? I can't believe there are actually real zombie sky beads in the world. I thought they were fake. Grandpa shoved me aside with his butt and sat next to Xiaomoyu first, leaving me no choice but to take the passenger seat. The living corpse sky pearl is not as simple as you think. It's not a bead, it's a corpse. Huh, Grandpa's eyes widened in shock. Seriously, well, out of 10,000 corpses, one must become a king. One of those corpses, after absorbing the resentment and malevolent energy from the others, will evolve into the legendary corpse king. But now, by a twist of fate, this 10,000 corpse pearl has been conceived, with the pearl and the king in conflict. The corpse king has already merged with this pearl, it's underwater, while the other corpses supply it with corpse energy. They also suppress it. Now that it's on land, once it regains its true form after midnight, its strength will be no less than that of the Ghost Mother. Ghost Mother. Upon hearing this, Jiang Haoyan, who was driving, immediately floored the accelerator. The car suddenly sped up, and Xiaomoyu lurched forward. Seizing the moment, she thrust the porcelain plate in her hand forward, catching the spilled soup steadily. Great skills, Xiaoya, look, look. Grandpa clapped along in response, and I asked curiously, is that the legendary ghost mother who eats devils? Xiaomoyu didn't answer, focusing intently on the lamb spine in his hands. Jiang Haoyan clearly had a major psychological trauma from the ghost mother. He stepped on the gas again and sped off without a word. Hey, Grandpa sighed, reached into the porcelain plate, and picked up a piece of lamb spine to gnaw on. TSK. This is the real deal, sect leader Qiao, no wonder you insisted on bringing this whole basin on the road. Only someone with your taste would find such delicious lamb spine. With just one sentence, he complimented both of them. The grandfather stroked his beard, feeling smug and satisfied. 8 Fuxian Lake, the third largest lake in Yunnan, covers an area of 212 square kilometers, shaped like a long gourd. It lies across the 3 counties of Qingjiang City, Jiangchuan District, and Huaning County. We only know that Brother Xing is at Fuxian Lake, but we don't know his exact location. After landing in Kunming, when the driver asked where we were headed, we all just stood there dumbfounded. Luckily, I had the screen recording feature on during the live stream. I opened my phone and scrolled to the last screenshot. In the picture, Brother Xing is grinning widely, with a blurry mountain view behind him and what looks like a few white leaves perched on his forehead. I swiped with both hands to zoom in on the photo. It looks like a windmill, Master. There windmills near Fuxian Lake. The driver leaned over to take a look. Oh, that's Mada Mountain, on the south shore of Fuxian Lake. It's quite high up, but the view is nothing special. Tourists usually head to the Ruby Beach in Yushi City. Are you going there? Actually, I can't even be sure that Brother Xing is still by the lake. The jeweler said he would take an hour-long flight to get there, arriving earlier than us. The two of them might have contacted each other privately and changed the location for the deal, but Xiaomoyu insisted that I go to the lake. You don't understand the corpse pearl. Xiaomoyu pointed upward at the blazing sun overhead. The yang energy is strong right now, and that pearl still relies on the corpse chi at the bottom of the water, so it can't stray too far from the shore. Even if he wants to make a deal, he'll have to wait until at least the hour of the rooster, when the sun is about to set. The U period is from 5 to 7 p.m. I checked my phone, and it's exactly 3:15 now, so there's about 2 hours left. Xiaomoyu told me and Grandpa to go find someone by the lake first, while she headed to the city center to prepare a bunch of ritual tools. Remember, you must find Brother Xing before 5 o'clock, seize the beads, and wait for me to arrive. The safety and stability of Yunnan's people are now in your hands. Xiaomoyu patted Grandpa on the shoulder, and Grandpa's face instantly lit up with a healthy glow. Don't worry, sect leader Qiao, leave this to me. 9. We took a taxi to the area near Mada Mountain and began searching for someone along the lakeshore. The weather is beautiful today, with not a single cloud in the sky. The deep blue sky is reflected in the lake, blending water and sky into one, a breathtaking sight. Fuxian Lake has long been a renowned tourist destination, with a constant stream of visitors along its shores. Every few steps, you can see people taking photos or spreading out picnic blankets. My eyes wide open, my grandfather and I stared intently at the crowd, searching as we walked, and we kept at it for nearly half an hour. It was almost 4:30, and there were even more tourists by the lake, but there was still no sign of Brother Xing. I rubbed my sore eyes, feeling anxious inside. Grandpa, how about we split up and search? Before I could finish my sentence, I saw Grandpa gasp sharply, his face turning deathly pale in an instant. Run, you crazy girl. Before I could react, Grandpa had already taken off sprinting. I was startled and instinctively ran after him. The corpse pearl has transformed. Stop. Right there, you up ahead. A sharp shout came from behind. Grandpa shuddered and ran even faster. Just as I turned to look, a dark shadow descended from above and pounced on me. I was knocked to the ground with a heavy thud, letting out a scream. Someone grabbed my arm from behind and pinned me firmly to the ground. Luckily, the grass was soft, so the fall didn't hurt that much. I turned my head in alarm, only to find myself caught between laughter and tears. Officer, it's all a misunderstanding. In that brief moment, another young policeman in uniform had already caught up and grabbed Grandpa as well. He let out a cold sneer and pressed down on Grandpa's shoulder. Go ahead, run, I'm a recruited athlete. 10. The young man confronted his grandfather. I saw you two sneaking around staring at people early this morning. What did you steal? The older policeman behind me pulled me up, frowning impatiently with his thick brows. Xiao Zhou, stop wasting your breath on them. Take them back to the station first, then we'll question them. I got anxious. If I go to the police station now, I won't be back in under an hour, and by then it'll be too late. Officer, it's really a misunderstanding. We're not thieves. We didn't do anything wrong. Grandpa used to be a grave robber. When I was in middle school, the capital suddenly launched a crackdown on antique dealers like him who were peddling black market goods. He lived like a startled bird every day, sleeping with one eye open, ready to bolt at the slightest sound. Grandpa said he wasn't really afraid of going to jail, but the main thing was that I was still young and there was no adult at home. If he got arrested, he had no idea how I would survive. He was constantly on edge, taking every precaution, but in the end, he got caught sneaking to pick me up from school at the gate. After spending a few years in prison, he still couldn't shake the habit of wanting to run at the sight of a cop. I stomped my foot in frustration, glaring at Grandpa with a look of utter disappointment. Grandpa, I really can't with you anymore. When are you ever going to kick that bad habit of yours? It's nothing but a waste of time. It was only then that Grandpa realized what had happened, and he smacked his head in frustration. Oh dear, sorry, occupational hazard, occupational hazard. Ah, this body is just so agile, reacts so fast, it's annoying. He put on a fawning smile, explained his situation, and then pleaded. Officer, my granddaughter and I have things to do. We really can't go to the station. Can you let us off the hook? My granddaughter is a student at Jingda University, the best university there is. How could she be a thief? Sarya, show them your student ID. I pulled my ID out of my bag, and Officer Zhou took it, glanced at it, and his expression softened a bit. Bro Zhao, look at this. Brother Zhao still kept a straight face. Humph. A grave robber who's turned over a new leaf. If you're this nervous, who are you trying to fool? Don't tell me you're here to do some kind of shady deal again. 11. Brother Zhao waved his hand impatiently. Xiao Zhou, you just graduated from the police academy, so pay attention. There are plenty of fake student IDs out there. People in this line of work love using these identities to lower people's guard. Don't waste your breath on them. Take them back to the station first. Without another word, she grabbed my arm and pulled me forward. I looked up and saw a police car parked in the distance ahead. Xiao Zhou shrugged. After you, both of you. Grandpa forced a smile and said a few more nice words, but this Zhao guy remained stubbornly unmoved, refusing to be swayed by any amount of flattery. I'm losing my patience. Grandpa, what should I do? As we were being pushed forward, drifting farther and farther from the lakeshore, Grandpa suddenly let out an ouch, and grabbed Officer Zhao's hand. Oh dear. I can't hide anything from the officer's sharp eyes. I confess, I really did come here to trade in black market goods. My eyes widened in shock. What are you talking about, Grandpa? Officer, I've confessed everything. Does that count as earning some credit? The other party is a major tomb raiding ring. They just dug up something valuable today and arranged to meet me here for the deal. If I take you to him, does that count as a meritorious deed? Brother Zhao finally broke into a smile, the crow's feet at the corners of his eyes smoothing out. You old fox, you finally played it smart. Grandpa winked at me. His name is Xing, wearing a white t-shirt and a baseball cap, pretending to be fishing by the lake. It dawned on me that the older, the wiser, Grandpa's life wisdom far surpasses mine. I quickly nodded along. Yeah, that's him, Grandpa. But aren't you breaking the rules by doing this? What about us after this? Grandpa's eyes narrowed. To hell with those underworld rules. He was the one who called me out first, so are we just supposed to take the fall? 12. We played along, and Officer Zhao didn't suspect a thing. Officer Zhou slapped his forehead and recalled, a fisherman. Zhao, didn't we just run into one up ahead, messing around with some heavy-set guy, all sneaky-like? There does seem to be such a person. Officer Zhao pondered for a moment, then pulled a pair of handcuffs from his pocket, cuffing my grandfather to the bench beside him before directing me. Morongyu, right, Xiao Zhou, take off your uniform jacket and take her to the rendezvous point. With that, he took off his own coat and draped it over Grandpa's hands, pretending to be a passerby following behind us. I was a bit worried about Grandpa, but then I thought, we'd go straight ahead and take down Brother Xing, then wait for Qiaomoyu to handle that orb. Grandpa shouldn't get into any trouble here. Xiao Zhou led me forward, and I looked back anxiously at Grandpa. I saw him sitting there on the chair, leisurely crossing his legs with a police uniform draped over his arm, even greeting the passers-by. Hey there, chubby little guy, come sit for a while, have a chat. The person across waved a hand dismissively. No, officer, you're busy. He, not busy at all. As long as you folks live in peace, I'm at ease. Officer Zhou from next door let out a snicker. Your grandpa's quite a character. I also breathed a sigh of relief. Grandpa is just that kind of person, no matter where he goes. He never lets himself be mistreated. We walked a few hundred meters along the lakeshore as the sun gradually set, yet the horizon was ablaze with fiery sunset clouds, burning across half the sky. Everyone raised their phones to take pictures, marveling at the stunning beauty of Fuxian Lake. So many people. Xiaozhou nodded. It's the weekend, and this kind of sunset is rare. Once everyone posts it on their moments, even more people will show up soon. I'm deeply worried. If things can be resolved smoothly, that's fine, but if they can't, the more people involved, the heavier the casualties will be. 13. Look, isn't that the guy up ahead? Officer Xiaozhou stopped in his tracks, mysteriously pulling me behind the crowd. I looked up and saw that middle-aged man by the lake shore, pressing down his hat brim. It was Brother Xing. Holy crap, this is freaky. What's going on? Brother Xing was sweating profusely, wiping his face as he bent down to pick up the beads from the ground. Standing across from him was a short, stout young man with a bright green jade Buddha pendant hanging around his neck, presumably the jeweler he was supposed to meet for the deal. I've finally figured it out. Tell me, do you even want to do business with me at all? You're stalling for time, aren't you? You've set up another buyer, haven't you? The jeweler crossed his arms and glared furiously at Brother Xing, who was anxiously trying to explain. Boss Wang, what are you talking about? You saw it yourself. I just handed you the bead, and it slipped right to the ground. In the past 10 minutes or so, it vanished from my pocket one moment, then dropped into the grass beside me the next, as if it had grown legs and could fly. I swear, it's like I've seen a ghost. At the mention of ghosts, Xingji's eyes widened, and he swallowed nervously in fear. Ghosts, ahem. Do you think there's something wrong with this bead? Maybe I should just throw it back. I can't be making money only to have no life to spend it. Brother Xing finally picked up the beads and made as if to throw them into the lake, but Boss Wang quickly grabbed his arm. Come on, I was just kidding. Ha ha ha. Xingge smirked triumphantly, feigned a flick of his arm, and clutched the bead tightly in his hand. The two of them huddled together and resumed their hushed conversation. Yeah, it's him. Damn, I can't believe he went behind our backs and set up another meeting with a buyer. Officer Zhou. We've caught him red-handed with the evidence. Don't let him get away. Alright, stay right here and don't move. Officer Zhou circled around to the front and signaled to Officer Chen in the distance. The two of them, one from the front and one from the back, moved in to surround Brother Xing. 14. Brother Xing was easily subdued by the two men and began to struggle desperately. What the hell? Who are you? A robbery in broad daylight. Call the police for me. Someone's robbing me. Someone's robbing me. I am the police. You're the antiquities trafficker, and you have the nerve to play the thief. Crying stop thief. Officer Chen slapped his police badge hard across the man's face. Seeing this, the bystanders immediately formed an excited circle to watch the drama unfold. I pushed through the crowd and squeezed in. Officer, that bead in his hand is the evidence. There's proof inside it. Let me show you. As I spoke, I tried to pry open Brother Xing's palm, but he clenched his fists tightly and hid behind Officer Chen, so furious that the veins on his temples were throbbing. Moronu, it's you. How can there be someone like you in this world, so jealous that you'd even bring the police to frame me? Officer, she's wronging me. She's just jealous and can't stand seeing others do well. I have evidence too. Let me show you the video. Brother Xing was indignant, and Boss Wang chimed in with his grievances. The two recounted the whole story, then opened their phones to show Officer Chen the recorded video. When they heard me say that was a living corpse, Sky Pearl and told Brother Xing to throw it into the water immediately, Officer Chen's temple twitched violently. Oh, so you're Brother Xing. I just finished watching the livestream and was looking for you by the lake. Yeah, we've been searching for a good 2 hours. Ha ha ha. Bro Xing, let us take a look at that zombie bead of yours. The bystanders joined in loudly, making a scene. Officer Chen, having figured out what had happened, put down his phone and shot me a fierce glare. What's wrong with you, young lady? Making a false police report is against the law. Thinking that Grandpa and I had tricked him into coming here to catch Brother Xing only made Officer Chen even angrier. You're coming to the police station with me right now. I can't go. There's no time. The floating corpse is about to wash ashore. Drenched in sweat from panic, I ducked to avoid Officer Chen's outstretched hand and lunged at Brother Xing. I knocked him to the ground, but he still clutched that bead tightly in his palm. Without a second thought, I lowered my head and bit down hard on Brother Shung's wrist. Ah, Shunga let out a blood-curdling scream and instinctively let go, sending the emerald green bead scattering across the floor. I was just about to pick it up when, in a flash, Officer Zhou had already scooped the bead into his hand. Give me the beads. I lunged at Xiao Zhou's back. He grabbed my wrist with one hand, smoothly executed a shoulder throw, and slammed me hard onto the lawn. 15. The onlookers burst into loud laughter, and some even held up their phones to livestream. Haha, the jealous haters got their just desserts. Morongyu is absolutely insane. She dared to snatch someone's stuff right in front of the police. Some people are just like that. If they can't have something, they want to destroy it. It's absolutely ridiculous. The chatter of the crowd buzzed in my ears as I lay on the ground, one hand on my lower back, seeing stars and drenched in cold sweat on my forehead. I'm running out of time. I can't afford to delay any further. I struggled to get up, turned around, and pointed a trembling hand toward the lake in terror. Look, a body's washed ashore. I only meant to bluff Officer Zhou, and while everyone was distracted, seized the chance to snatch the bead back from his hand. But the next second, I froze in place, my heart pounding wildly, and my face instantly turned deathly pale. In sight, a gray, dusty figure with stiff limbs was slowly crawling out of the water. I looked up at the half-setting sun. The sky awash with a blood-red sunset, eerily ominous. Wow, it's already 5 o'clock. Heh heh heh, little girl, that trick of yours won't work on us. Officer Zhou laughed so hard his shoulders shook. Clutching the beads tightly in his hand, he turned and shot a quick glance toward the lake shore. So what if I saw it? I take another look, and I'm like, hey, who are you? Swimming in Fuxian Lake is prohibited. Officer Zhou, with a stern expression, shouted loudly at the man. The crowd also joined in with reproaches. Yeah, who is this guy? So rude. Look, his clothes are so dirty. Could it really be a floating corpse? Ha 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 ha. I grabbed Officer Zhou's sleeve, desperately making one last attempt. That's really a floating corpse. Evacuate the crowd immediately, then throw the bead back into the water. Before Officer Zhou could speak, Officer Chen beside him let out a cold snort. Are you telling us what to do? 16. The floating corpse drew closer, its head bowed, clad in strangely styled garments. Its skin seemed coated in a layer of oil, merging with the clothes. As a viscous liquid dripped down in a steady trickle, my heart skipped a beat. It turned out to be a wax corpse. A wax corpse is formed when a body is in a special environment after death, usually in water or water-rich soil. The body fat turns into wax and seeps out to create the formation. Wax corpses do not decay or decompose. There is a layer of milky white wax-like substance on the skin, which at first glance resembles a plaster sculpture. Dude, someone just said you were a floating corpse. Ha ha ha. Being mistaken for a dead body. How do you feel about that? The young man who was live streaming with his phone just now bounced over cheerfully, forming a fist like a microphone. The wax corpse slowly lifted its head. I gasped. He looked as if he had been hit by a stream of water while being waxed. His facial features completely melted and out of place. His eyeballs, like a lizard's, had shifted almost to the sides of his cheeks, while his nose was oddly perched on top of his head, with nostrils flaring outward. The most horrifying part was the mouth. It had no upper lip, leaving the entire gum exposed. Holy shit, the young man let out a yell and jumped back, but it was too late. The wax corpse lunged at him and sank its teeth into his neck. Ah, a monster, help. The crowd instantly fell into chaos, with people screaming and scattering in all directions. Several young children were pushed to the ground in the crush, crying out in distress. Hurry, give me the beads. I lunged toward Officer Zhou to snatch the living corpse sky bead. This time, he didn't resist, standing still with his mouth slightly open, letting me take the bead away. Officer Chen snapped out of it and rushed forward to pull the wax corpse off the person. But as soon as he reached out, the body was so slippery that he couldn't get a grip no matter how hard he tried. The young man pinned to the ground had his carotid artery torn open by a bite, blood spurting out as his limbs twitched and flailed wildly. 17. Get him into the water, quick. I waved my hands frantically and shouted. Officer Chen gritted his teeth, gave the wax corpse a heavy kick on the shoulder, and knocked it over. The wax corpse struggled to its feet again, attempting to lunge forward. At that moment, Officer Zhou stepped in. Bracing one hand on Officer Chen's shoulder, he swung his body through the air in a sweeping arc and delivered a powerful kick that sent the wax corpse flying. The wax corpse fell back into the water with a splash, sending droplets flying everywhere. Great job. I clapped my hands in excitement, only to realize the bead was still in my grip. I quickly took a running start, swung my arm high, and the bead traced a beautiful parabola through the air before splashing into the lake. My 2 million, Shunga let out a wail of anguish. But he didn't dare run to the lake to look, so he just stomped his feet in frustration. Officers, you have to testify for me, make her pay me 2 million, enough, what compensation? Shut up. Officer Chen wiped the cold sweat off his face and looked at me with lingering fear. That thing won't come back up, will it? Probably not. I was speechless, my mouth wide open, my jaw completely unhinged. Behind Officer Chen, the lake's surface churned like boiling water, bubbling up endlessly. Then the bubbles burst, revealing gray figures within. Thump. I swallowed hard and slowly stepped back. Morong, you're pulling that trick again, don't try to scare me. Officer Chen glanced back quickly and gasped, quick, Xiao Zhou, evacuate the crowd first. The two police officers were still very responsible, even at this critical moment. They never thought of fleeing on their own. Instead, they sprinted in opposite directions along the lake's edge, shouting at the top of their lungs for everyone to leave. But the wax corpse attacks only happened in our area. Fuxian Lake has a very long shoreline, so people in other parts had no idea what was going on. They were still enjoying themselves as usual, even curiously walking to the lakeside to look at those gray figures. Officer Chen and his team had swapped their uniforms for plain clothes, so many people didn't take their words seriously. It wasn't until the waxy corpses that crawled ashore lunged at the crowd and people began to be tackled and bitten one after another that everyone finally snapped out of it. All of them screamed and fled in every direction, throwing the shore into utter chaos. 18 Along the endless lakeshore, wax corpses kept crawling ashore one after another, with sounds of fighting and roaring everywhere. My palms clenched tightly, sweat beading all over my forehead. Oh no, Grandpa, what do I do now? Wait, Grandpa. My heart felt as if a giant hand had suddenly clenched it, stopping its beat. As an overwhelming fear spread through my entire body, Grandfather was still handcuffed to the chair. Unable to evade the wax corpse's attack at all, I turned and stumbled toward the bench, my legs so weak I could barely stand. By the time I reached the bench, I could already see my grandfather from a distance, one hand propped on the bench as he jumped back and forth like playing leapfrog, while a wax corpse circled around him. Grandpa, I sprinted over, and when Grandpa turned to look, he was overjoyed. Bracing himself on the chair, he leaped again, narrowly dodging the attack from the wax corpse. He was panting heavily, his chest heaving violently. Phew, you wild girl, phew, where's the key? I stopped in my tracks and said awkwardly, I didn't take it, you useless piece of trash. Then why are you here? To collect my corpse? I'd have been better off giving birth to a rolling pin than to you. Grandpa was furious. I looked around and spotted a folding chair lying overturned on the ground. Rushing over, I slammed it hard into the wax corpse, but this wax corpse was different from the ones before. I struck it hard, yet it didn't react at all. Instead, its eyes turned bloodshot, and it roared as it lunged at me. I turned and ran, but after just a few steps, a copper coin came flying straight toward me. Get down. The copper coin embedded itself into the wax corpse's forehead, and the corpse crashed to the ground. Overwhelmed with excitement, I rushed over and grabbed Xiao Moyu's arm. Boo-hoo, my dear, you're finally back. What's going on? You didn't find Brother Xing. 19 Xiao Moyu walked over, casually pulled out a piece of wire to pick the lock for Grandpa. As I explained the situation to her, her face stiffened. Oh no, throwing the beads back won't do any good now. Once the hour of the rooster arrives, yang wanes and waxes, energy grows. Without the beads to absorb the corpse aura, those wax corpses can no longer be controlled. The beads have been exposed to sunlight for too long, so energy can't regenerate quickly enough to suppress the bodies. She unfastened the handcuffs, formed a hand seal with both hands, and murmured to herself, you belongs to metal. Metal governs slaughter and warfare. Yang fire overcomes metal. I've got it. I'll set up a release gen formation and place the bead at the formation's eye to quickly activate its energy. You go into the water and fish out the bead. My eyes widened. What? Xiao Moyu patiently explained. Gen means great mountain, and the Sure Gen formation is an array designed to dilute the power of mountain spirits. I'll find the eye of the formation to draw out the do, pulling the hidden energy from the ground and gathering it at the eye. That pearl will take effect soon. I waved my hand, my face full of terror. Are you asking me to fish a bead out of the water? Yes, that bead has passed through your hands, so it's connected to you. Once you're in the water, you can rely on that inner sense to find it. Alright, enough with the nonsense. Good thing I had the foresight to bring everything we need. I'll have Jiang Haoyan bring over the diving gear. Get ready. Grandpa was beside me, hesitating to speak. Chief Chiao, our Yaya is not up to the task. Qianluyu glared. Then will you go with her? Ahem, don't you worry, little one. Going down there is just the thing to build your courage. I've figured it out for you. You'll live to be 80. As for me, this old man's not so lucky. These old bones of mine would fall apart the moment they hit the water. I was on the verge of tears. I really didn't want to get into the water, but I felt like I was partly responsible for how things had turned out. Biting my lip, I stiffly and mechanically put on the diving gear. Qianluyu was busy at work, holding a peachwood sword and a stack of command flags, clearing away the wax corpses while finding time to set up a formation. 20 Shallow water is clear, deep water is green. Along the shore of Fuxian Lake, the water was so clear you could see the bottom, with the cobblestones below clearly visible. But just a meter or two forward, the water color suddenly shifted, turning into a gem-like blue-green. I put on my gear and jumped into the water. The wetsuit kept the icy lake at bay, but a chill still seeped through the fabric. I dove a few meters deeper, and with every meter, the cold intensified, making my body shiver uncontrollably. At this depth, there is still light penetrating the water, but the deeper you go, the darker it becomes, until the pitch-black depths seem to harbor some unknown monster lurking below. I suppressed the fear in my heart, tried my best to calm myself down, closed my eyes, and focused on sensing the connection with that bead. Soon, I heard a gentle female voice faintly calling out to me from afar, Moronyu, come here. I took a deep breath and swam toward the direction of the sound. I dived deep, and soon everything around me went pitch black. I could only rely on the headlamp above me to light up a small patch of space ahead. Some scattered giant boulders came into view. Not far off stood a towering platform, rising majestically from the waterbed like a pyramid, except its top was flat. It seems the folk legend is true. There really is an ancient city at the bottom of this water. I circled halfway around the platform, sensing the location of that bead, when a flash of white suddenly darted past the corner of my eye. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly turned to look, but the water was pitch black, nothing there, as if what I had just seen was nothing more than my imagination. It's okay, the floating bodies have all been brought ashore, the water is safe now. I kept reassuring myself as I continued circling the platform, and soon, I spotted an opening. I peered inside and saw a narrow passage leading into the heart of the structure. The ancient tomb on the grassland last time left me with a deep fear of cramped, enclosed spaces. Instinctively, I didn't want to go in, but that bead was inside. Go for it, Lu Xiaokue, you can do this. I gritted my teeth, kicked my legs, and squeezed myself in. Just as more than half of my body was inside, a sudden force came from behind. I felt someone grab my ankle. I was utterly terrified and instinctively thrashed about, flailing my arms and kicking my legs, glancing backward as I struggled. That's when I realized there were clumps of waterweed at the mouth of the cave, which had just tangled around my feet. 21 I breathed a sigh of relief, turned around to untangle the waterweed, and continued swimming further in. Not far along the passage, the view suddenly opened up. The interior of the platform was hollow, and the pearl lay quietly on the ground, glowing softly under the beam of the searchlight. To my surprise, everything went so smoothly. I dove down and picked up the bead. Just then, a pale hand suddenly reached out from the darkness and pressed down hard on the back of my hand. I looked up and was scared out of my wits. Across from me was a female wax corpse, her features perfectly intact, her pitch-black eyes fixed on me with an unblinking stare, and a sinister smile lingering at the corners of her mouth. I punched her square in the face, grabbed the bead, and swam for my life. As soon as I rushed into the passage, I came face to face with a ghastly pale face, its mouth and nose twisted, and its eyes crossed toward the center. Damn it, I screamed in terror, and a huge bubble escaped from my mouth. I had no choice but to turn back and face the female wax corpse. At least she was easier on the eyes and not as terrifying. Fortunately, the wax corpse's movements were stiff, and it was actually much slower in the water than on land, so even someone with my level of fitness could hold my own against it. But I could barely handle one. When the two attacked together, I was instantly overwhelmed. As the other wax corpse lunged at me, I kicked out hard, using the momentum to push off in the opposite direction and dart into the tunnel. I paddled frantically, my arms spinning like windmill wheels. The passage wasn't long. By all logic, I should have been out by now, but no matter how long I swam, ahead of me was still the same narrow corridor. It dawned on me a little too late that I might have taken the wrong path. There was more than one exit inside this tower. The tunnel took a turn ahead, and on the left, there was unexpectedly a small stone chamber, only about a dozen square meters. I swam into the chamber, and as my searchlight swept across it, my heart suddenly clenched with fear. In the stone chamber stood 7 or 8 wax corpses, upright and suspended in the water, swaying left and right with the current. Oh no, so many of them. I'm afraid I'm done for here. A wave of sheer terror washed over me. My limbs went numb, and my eyes welled up with tears. I stood frozen for several minutes. Surprisingly, those wax corpses didn't attack me, which gave me back some strength. Driven by curiosity, I leaned in to take a closer look at the bodies. Shining my lamp up close, I realized these wax corpses were different from the ones on the shore. Most of the flesh on their bodies had been gnawed away, leaving only bare white bones. Some were missing arms or legs, their limbs incomplete. What kind of creature had bitten them? The thought crossed my mind, and I silently cursed. Could there be piranhas in this water? I immediately turned and swam outward, but it was too late. A massive dark shadow burst out of the darkness and slammed hard into my calf. 22. A sharp pain shot through my calf. I looked down and saw a chunk of flesh had been torn from my leg. A dark, eerie fish about a meter long was staring at me with a predatory glare, with its wide lips and 2 long whiskers by its mouth. This was a massive catfish. Catfish are carnivorous and highly aggressive, and this one had been feeding on so many corpses here that it had decided to treat me as its prey. I immediately got furious. I couldn't take on Xiaomoyu, I couldn't handle the wax corpse, and now even a fish was coming after me. I reached down to my thigh and felt a dagger. It was something I had specifically strapped there for self-defense before diving in. When the catfish charged at me again, I spun around and thrust the blade into it with a fierce stab. As expected, I missed. Instead, it whipped its tail and struck me hard across the lower back, leaving my entire back numb. Furious and in pain, I lost my temper and charged back with a vengeance, wildly slashing and stabbing with the dagger. I must have hit something, because blood quickly spread through the water. My mind was a mess, and I just acted on pure instinct like a madman. By the time I calmed down and looked again, the fish was already gone. I walked around the stone chamber and noticed that there was also a hole in the innermost wall. Going back the same way would mean fighting those 2 wax corpses again. I might as well go in through here and see if there's another exit. Without overthinking it, I slipped into the cave and swam forward. For a while, luckily, I bet right and got myself out of the stone platform. Unfortunately, there was a large school of silver carp ahead, some leisurely swaying in the water, others half buried in the mud. I feel like I'd wandered into their lair. Both of us froze for a second. Several silver carp rushed toward me at full speed. I had no desire to fight at all and desperately swam toward the surface of the lake. My back slammed against the surface with a loud thud, and the shimmering light on the water grew closer and closer. Finally, I burst out of the water, ripped off my mask, and gasped for air. Grandpa, help, a fish is biting me. You're totally useless, can't even handle a few fish. Holy crap, Master Qiao, help, there's a shark in this lake. You look like a shark to me. Xiaomoyu rolled her eyes and casually tossed a few talismans onto the lake. Boom, a series of lightning bolts flashed by, and half of my body went numb. 23. I swam back to the shore with all my might, collapsed on the bank, and gasped for air. Xiaomoyu took the bead from my hand, wrapped it in a talisman paper, and placed it under a large tree ahead. She chanted a long string of incantations. Soon, I felt a chilling wind rise from all directions, and the temperature suddenly dropped several degrees. The wax corpses stopped attacking and froze in place. Countless white threads emerged from their bodies, connecting to that celestial bead. Slowly, one by one, the wax corpses turned around, walked to the lakeside, and jumped into the lake with a series of splashes, like dumplings being dropped into boiling water on the shore. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared in shock at this scene. Holy crap, this master is incredible. I thought Morongyu was just bluffing, but he actually has real skills. Yeah, what's wrong with that brother Xing? He just wouldn't listen to advice. Look now, how many people have died? Brother Xing was also bitten by the wax corpse, lying pale-faced on the ground, barely breathing. Xiaomoyu put away the bead and let out a sigh of relief. Everyone, call 120 for an ambulance right away. They're just poisoned by corpse venom. They can still be saved. It's just that the first young man couldn't be saved. His artery was bitten through, and he bled to death. After we cleaned up the mess, everyone was extremely grateful to us and even wanted to present us with a banner of honor. This time, the wax corpse washed ashore, and too many people witnessed it. Videos are all over the internet. There's no way to cover it up. Chiao Moyu looked serious. Living corpse beads don't come ashore for no reason. Something may have gone wrong at the ghost gate. Are you going to Chongqing? Chiao Moyu shook his head and pointed into the distance. The true gate of hell is at Mount Tai. The end. Story 2. At the graduation ceremony, the crush I had liked for 3 years confessed his love to me. When I was immersed in the joy of my secret love finally blossoming, he suddenly sneered, "You little lickspittle, it's just that I lost a truth or dare game." There was a burst of laughter all around. I looked at him quietly and reached out to gently stroke his face. Then a slap landed. "You're nothing like him." The clear sound of the slap rang out. The whole audience fell silent, as if the air had solidified. All eyes were on me. Brian's face showed a look of shock. I stood there quietly, showing no outward emotion. The previous laughter turned into sighs. I held back the sadness in my heart and clearly heard the sound of my heart breaking. It was crisp and decisive. "What do you mean?" There was anger in Brian's eyes. I tightly clenched my hands, trying to suppress the trembling inside. There was an indescribable heaviness in the air. My eyes gradually became moist and red, and I pursed my lips to keep myself from looking too embarrassed. The Brian in front of me gradually overlapped with the person in my mind. Then it separated again, reflecting Brian's arrogant appearance. Sure enough, no one could replace him. My hand hanging by my side trembled slightly. "You're nothing like him." 3 years ago, I participated in a game test. My target to pursue was Calvin. In the game world, I could vividly feel the existence of this person. He wasn't just data, he was a real, living person. But where there is a first encounter, there is also a parting. When the story ended, I was sent back to my own world along with the system. The moment I stepped out of the vortex, I looked at the familiar game tester in front of me. I dragged my exhausted body home. The scene in front of me seemed almost indistinguishable from the game world, but I could never go back to that time. Looking at the ceiling, hot tears streamed down from my eyes. My friends around me have comforted me countless times, saying that he was just a game character, but I just couldn't get over it. Returning to my college life, I accidentally met Brian, who had similar eyebrows and eyes to Calvin. Perhaps it was really time to give myself a chance to move on. I began to pursue Brian crazily. My bottomless lickspill behavior made everyone around me look down on me, but I didn't care. It was the only chance for me to feel that Calvin might still be by my side. Brian and Calvin had many similarities. They were both carefree on the surface but vulnerable inside. But after all, Brian wasn't Calvin. Watching Brian's expression change from shock to anger, I remained indifferent. The people around began to whisper they couldn't understand my actions just now, nor could they accept this sudden change. "Brian, you don't understand at all." The news that I slapped Brian spread throughout the school in an instant. My roommate Judy was the first to congratulate me. "You're finally awake. That jerk deserved that slap." I looked at Judy's indignant appearance and smiled with my eyes lowered. To celebrate my getting rid of the label of a lickspittle, Judy specially dragged me to a newly opened tavern opposite the school. "You haven't told me yet. How did you feel about that game you experienced before?" Only Judy knew that I participated in the game test during my freshman year. After coming back, I had been absent-minded and lost. She had never dared to ask, but now, taking advantage of the alcohol, she finally asked the question. It felt average. The mission was to prevent Calvin from being with the bad woman who was using him. In the end, I drove the bad woman away. However, in the end, I became that bad woman myself. Even in this quiet bar, there were many men with both good looks and figures. Judy soon became too busy to deal with me. It was as if I had put up a protective screen, and the world of others had nothing to do with me. Out of boredom, I examined the design of the bar and found that there were large bouquets of gardenias piled up in the middle of the transparent glass window. Gardenias. That was the first bouquet of flowers that Calvin had given me in the game. I didn't expect the boss of this place to have such good taste. I rested my chin in my hand and looked at the gardenias. The sound of the glass cup hitting the table brought me back to reality. "Hello, miss, this is a drink sent to you by our boss. He saw that you've been looking at the gardenias and asked me to tell you that if you like them, he can give you a bouquet as a token of gratitude for your visit." The waiter left with a smile. I picked up the glass in front of me and took a sip. It was actually peach-flavored. "The boss of this place really knows you well. You didn't even order peach-flavored wine today, but he could guess that you like peach flavor." Judy's words woke me up. In a flash of inspiration, I realized something. There might be many people who know that I like peach juice, But there is only one person related to Gardenius. It's him, it's Calvin. I pushed through the crowd and quietly followed the waiter. He opened the door and walked into a private room. The door of the private room was tightly closed. I could only lie on the door and eavesdrop, but I couldn't hear anything. What are they talking about? I murmured to myself. The door suddenly opened from the inside, and I lost my balance and fell in. I looked up clumsily and glanced behind the waiter. There was a man sitting in the shadows. He held a cigarette between his fingers, but his face was hidden in the darkness. Sorry, I'll take this lady out right away. The waiter pulled me up from the ground. I broke free and took a few steps forward, trying to see the man's face clearly. Seeing that he was still sitting on the sofa indifferently, I was so annoyed that I shook off the waiter violently. Are there any other young and handsome waiters like you here? Call a few more over. The man sitting in the shadows paused slightly in his action of smoking. Upon hearing this, I vaguely expected something from him, but the other party just took the last puff and extinguished the cigarette. But, alright, take her out. The man hidden in the dim light finally spoke. His deliberately lowered voice had a faint hoarseness after smoking, but I still recognized it. The man finally stood up and walked in front of me. In the dim light, I still recognized that face. My eyes instantly became moist, and I tried my best to hold back my tears, but I still couldn't hide my excitement. I didn't mistake him, and it was impossible to mistake him. You. His steps suddenly stopped. I watched as he put his hands in his pockets and turned to look at me, but his indifferent eyes made my heart feel cold. Sorry, miss, the second floor is not open to guests. Calvin's eyes didn't dodge at all, and his eyelashes drooped as he looked at me without any emotion. I had the courage to follow him here and find him, but in his polite and distant tone, I felt a bit at a loss. Calvin brushed past me. The room suddenly fell silent again. The waiter politely tried to help me, but I refused. I stood there in a daze, looking at the ground with empty eyes, trying not to cry out loud. No need, I'll go by myself. I needed to find the game planner. I had to ask about this matter clearly at this moment. I urgently needed an answer and immediately dialed the other person's phone number. After a while, he finally answered. As I listened to what he said, my whole heart sank into an ice cellar, dragging my almost exhausted body home. All I could think about were the words said on the phone. A few days ago, the system reported that the game character Calvin tried to self-destruct. Although the protection system automatically stopped it, as a precaution, we made an exchange condition. Calvin was allowed to come to the real world, but once he is recognized by the person who wants to see him, he will be automatically destroyed. Is there no solution? There is no solution. After a long time, there were still only those two words in my mind. No solution. This was a closed loop. I slowly closed my eyes, digesting these facts. The fates of the two of us had been tightly intertwined from the moment we met. One of us must end up unable to forget the other and spend the rest of our lives in memory. I didn't want that for him. The next day, I returned to school with dark circles under my eyes, and I just happened to run into Brian. Brian stood in front of the teaching building, with his hands in his pockets and a look of disdain on his face as he stared at me. Aren't you Miss Camille? What, did you have a good time acting last night? His tone was sarcastic, and it was obvious that he was still brooding over what had happened yesterday. I remained calm and didn't want him to see the panic in my heart. I found that some trash just can't stand to see others doing well. I retorted to Brian without being servile or overbearing, but Brian just sneered contemptuously. It was as if my anger was just a clownish act in his eyes. Brian approached me, with a teasing and dangerous look. You don't really think I'll believe you just because you said that, do you, Camille? No matter how much you try to disguise yourself, you can't hide the fact that you were my lickspittle for 3 years. I held back my anger, but I still couldn't help raising my hand, ready to slap him. Brian had expected this, and suddenly grabbed my wrist. He squeezed my wrist tightly, and the pain made me frown. The people around began to whisper, and their eyes shifted between us. The corner of Brian's mouth curled into a triumphant smile, but I didn't show the angry or annoyed expression he had expected in the face of his provocation. I just looked at him calmly. I did regret it. I regretted being obsessed with him just because he somewhat resembled Calvin. My eyes gradually filled with tears, but I refused to let them fall. Now that I think about it, no one can replace Calvin. No one ever could. I took a deep breath and forced myself to break free from the memories. I forcefully shook off Brian's grip, looking at the person in front of me with cold eyes. Brian, who do you think you are? Don't you feel disgusted that you keep coming to slander me to satisfy your vanity? Brian didn't expect me to fight back like this. He was stunned, and his face gradually turned dark. I clearly felt his burning gaze and turned away without hesitation. My steps suddenly became lighter. When I stepped into that tavern again, There weren't many people there yet. Every time I arrived at the tavern, after a while, a faint light would turn on in that room on the second floor. This was the only connection between me and Calvin, and I always followed the routine and ordered that peach wine. The peach flavor was strong, just like the peach juice he held in his hand when he picked me up that afternoon. It was something that was hard to forget. It was like a cycle of fate between us, or like an intersection of time and space. I was immersed in the sweetness of the peach wine, my thoughts drifting into the distance. At the beginning of entering the game, I always regarded him as the target to pursue, but gradually, I found that he seemed to really have flesh and blood, not a character built from data. The feeling of being attracted to Calvin every time couldn't be fake. At the moment of our final separation, I reached out to touch his face, but my fingertips passed through time and space and also through his body. In the end, I still couldn't say those words. I love you, Calvin, I love you. I had been coming here for a week in a row. I looked forward to meeting Calvin here every day, but every time, it was just me sitting quietly in the corner, savoring the peach wine, remembering every bit of our time in the game. Calvin was allowed to come to the real world, and once he is recognized by the person who wants to see him, he will be automatically destroyed. I tightly gripped the wine glass, suppressing the urge to rush into his arms. I couldn't recognize him, but I didn't expect that as soon as I pushed open the door of the tavern that day, I saw the familiar figure. Calvin was wearing a black trench coat, holding a cigarette in his hand, with deep and lonely eyes. It was Calvin. I recognized him almost immediately, and my heart started pounding violently. I suppressed the excitement in my heart and carefully walked over and sat down in the empty seat next to him. The waiter soon brought the peach wine I had ordered. I didn't drink it right away, but just looked at Calvin. His profile looked even more three-dimensional under the dim light, and every contour was so familiar. I couldn't help but think of every bit of our time in the game. Those sweet moments seemed like they were just yesterday. The sweetness of the peach wine melted in my mouth, but I couldn't taste anything. My heart was filled with contradictions and struggles. On the one hand, I wanted to recognize Calvin. On the other hand, I was afraid that doing so would make him disappear. The tavern gradually became more crowded. Calvin stood up and was about to go to the second floor. After hesitating for a few seconds, I chased after him. I instinctively wanted to call his name, but at the last moment, I didn't say it. Calvin stopped at the corner of the stairs and looked back at me. I felt my heart suddenly beating very fast. His cold eyes stabbed at my heart, but they didn't push me back. The peach wine is really delicious. I tried to find a suitable opening line, but I found that my voice was trembling a bit. Calvin looked at me, his pupils trembling slightly, but he didn't respond. He nodded slightly and continued to go upstairs. I stood there, hiding my disappointment. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward again. Can I be friends with you? Calvin's eyes darkened, and he stopped again, but he didn't turn around. I pursed my lips and slowly walked in front of him. After a moment of silence, I took the initiative to extend my hand. My name is Camille. Calvin looked down at the hand I extended and didn't shake it for a long time. Holding back the sadness in my heart, I forced a smile. Seeing that he opened his mouth but hesitated to speak, I spoke first. I'll call you Peach. After all, the peach wine is really delicious. Calvin's eyes were as deep as the sea, and his gaze was firmly fixed on me. He took a deep breath, suppressing the emotions that were about to overflow, and finally shook my hand. I felt the coldness from his fingertips, and my nose suddenly felt sour. Warmth was engraved in my heart at this moment. Hello, Camille. I'm Peach. After that day, the interactions between me and Calvin gradually increased. We began to meet frequently in the tavern. The content of our conversations also changed from the initial awkwardness to being natural and smooth. But just when everything was getting better, Brian started to disgust me again. A scandal that I was being kept as a mistress spread on the school forum. The attached photos were of me with Calvin in the tavern. I suddenly became the target of public criticism and was spurned by everyone. They were all accusing me of selling my body and soul for money. I was so angry that I was shaking all over. But I was also at a loss as to what to do. You son of a bitch, you even dared to take surreptitious photos. I squeezed the photos in my hand tightly and quickly got up to find Brian. At that moment, he was happily singing in a private room with his new girlfriend in his arms. I suddenly threw all those photos in his face. Brian, aren't you disgusting? Brian's original smiling face turned gloomy the moment he saw the photos. He glanced at the content of the photos and mockingly curled the corners of his mouth. Didn't you always want an opportunity like this to get ahead? Now I've given it to you, so what's with your attitude? Brian's tone was full of disdain and contempt. It was as if I had become a chess piece that he could manipulate at will. I couldn't bear it any longer and directly stepped forward, picked up the wine glass on the table, and splashed it in his face. "Shut up." Brian wiped the wine off his face, his expression full of mockery. "I didn't expect that you, a lickspittle, have quite a temper." His words were full of insults and scorn. I clenched my fists tightly. The pain of my nails digging into my palms made me calm down a bit. I couldn't lose control here, otherwise it would only make Brian even more pleased with himself. I desperately tried to calm my emotions and pretended to be calm. "This is the last warning to you. Don't provoke me again." I turned around and left the private room. Brian's mocking words and his girlfriend's giggles gradually faded away. I stood at the end of the corridor, looking out at the night outside the window, my heart in chaos. The photo incident had already made me the target of public criticism, and now Brian was constantly provoking me. I felt as if I had been drawn into a nightmare from which I couldn't escape. "Camille," a familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up. Calvin was standing under a tree a few meters away, seemingly having been waiting for my appearance for a long time. He stood not far away, and the sadness in his eyes was obvious without being said. I opened my mouth but didn't know what to say. Calvin looked at me and slowly walked forward. Silence filled the space between us. I raised my eyes and looked into his eyes, remembering that whenever I was wronged, I would pour out my heart to him. With his company, all my negative energy would gradually fade away, and it seemed that I would only pour out all my sadness in front of him. My nose involuntarily became sour, and my vision in front of me became hazy. Calvin's eyes also seemed to become moist. He pulled me into his arms, and I instinctively leaned my head against his chest. The days when we could only interact through a cold screen had now turned into being able to clearly hear his strong heartbeat. All my grievances finally found an outlet. My tears welled up and silently soaked Calvin's shirt, his arms tightly wrapped around me, as if he wanted to merge me into his body. At that moment, only the sounds of our heartbeats and breaths intertwined. Then I felt the warmth of his breath in my ear. "Stop crying. How about I make you a glass of your favorite peach wine?" "Okay." I returned to the dormitory, turned on the computer, and started dealing with those photos. Just sitting around and waiting for the worst wasn't a good way out. This was what Calvin had told me. I contacted a media company, and they agreed to help me deal with these photos and clarify the truth. At the same time, I released a series of negative information about Brian on the forum, including how he resorted to any means to get ahead and became a male mistress, how he was dating several people at the same time, and so on. Every word was piercing and every word was true. As soon as these negative news were released, they immediately caused a huge stir. Brian's image instantly collapsed, and he became the scumbag in everyone's mouth, and I became the victim and received everyone's sympathy and support. Brian came to me in a fit of rage. Looking at his desperate appearance again, the corners of my mouth couldn't help but rise. "Camille, how dare you do this?" In the face of his angry roar, my smile became even broader. "I just did what you once did to me. Why are you so angry? Moreover, what I said is the truth, Mr. Time Management." Brian was left speechless by my words and stared at me with a pale face. Seeing his chest heaving violently, I provocatively raised my eyebrows. He was so angry with my attitude that he raised his hand, ready to slap me. I didn't have time to dodge and instinctively closed my eyes. "If you land that slap, there's probably going to be one more piece of negative news about you." Calvin's voice came from behind me. I turned around and saw him holding up his phone to record. After meeting my gaze, he quickened his pace until he walked up to me and tightly grasped Brian's wrist. "Look, the dog is getting desperate." Calvin's carefree voice came from my side. I suddenly remembered that he had the same tone when we first met in the game. I lowered my eyes to hide my smile. I looked up at Calvin, and a hint of anger was hidden in his slightly furrowed brows. Then he suddenly shook off Brian's hand. "Using the same method against you as you used against others, yet you're the one getting anxious first." He mockingly curled the corners of his mouth and looked at Brian with cold eyes. Brian was overwhelmed by his imposing manner and didn't dare to say a word for a moment. Calvin pulled my wrist and led me away from this place full of trouble. Everything seemed to have come to an end. After that, Brian never caused me any trouble again. He probably didn't expect that I would have so much negative information about him in my hands. He also feared Calvin's methods, and the relationship between Calvin and me gradually heated up during this time. It was as if we had returned to the time when we were playing the game, but things didn't go as we wished. One day, I received a call from the game tester. He told me that the system had issued a warning again, because Calvin had left. There was a bug in the game world. If he didn't go back, he would only dissipate in the real world. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to me. I held the phone tightly, and a wave of panic welled up in my heart. Complex and selfish emotions spread in my chest. I didn't want Calvin to go back. I wanted to keep him by my side, but I couldn't bear to watch him dissipate like this. The voice in my ear sounded again. Camille, don't forget, Calvin shouldn't be a person in the real world in the first place. I hung up the phone and sat by the bed with empty eyes. My thoughts were as messy as shredded cotton wool. Calvin, how should I choose between reality and illusion? How should I balance? If I lost him, would my world still be complete? But the tester's words also woke me up. Calvin had always come for me. I had indulged in his company but forgotten that we were never from the same world. Tears suddenly welled up in my eyes and slid down my cheeks. I covered my face and couldn't hold back my emotions anymore. Okay, I promise you, on a sunny weekend, I took Calvin to a resort in the suburbs. The scenery there was beautiful. There were mountains, water, and a lush green meadow. We spread out a picnic mat on the grass and enjoyed the warm sunshine and delicious food. It was as if we had briefly escaped from all the hustle and bustle. Calvin looked at me with full affection as I ate. Peach, do you know the contrapositive answer to I love you? I suddenly asked. He thought for a moment before giving an answer. You don't love me. Then he gently shook his head and gave a different answer. Should it be that if you don't love me, then I will love you? There was finally a smile on my face, but I shook my head to deny both of these answers. I lowered my head and raised the corners of my mouth to give the correct answer. The contrapositive answer to this question is, if someone doesn't love you, then that person must not be me. It's a pity that in my case, this question doesn't have a contrapositive answer. Because I will always love you. I still couldn't say these words out loud. Just like in the game, I finally didn't express my feelings, but it seemed that Calvin understood. He smiled brightly and looked at me quietly. We were thus immersed in each other's eyes. This moment seemed like it would last forever. Everything seemed so peaceful until I walked into this bar with a man. Please give me 2 glasses of peach wine. Thank you. I affectionately held the arm of the man beside me. Calvin didn't expect that there would be someone else by my side today. I saw the loss and pain in his eyes, but he still pretended to be calm and replied, sorry, the peach wine is sold out today. I had made all the preparations, but when I saw Calvin, I still instinctively fell apart. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I could only pull the person beside me up in a hurry. Since there's none, we'll leave first. Walking on the familiar street, I suddenly felt that it was so long. The boy beside me suddenly asked, sister, is he the person you said you loved very much? But aren't you pushing him further and further away by doing this? I raised the corners of my mouth bitterly and let out a long sigh. Looking at the scenery in the distance, I couldn't enjoy it. I remained silent for a long time before giving a response. Not all loves can have a happy ending. I also really want to be with him, but I can't. He didn't ask any more questions. After saying goodbye, I stood alone on the street at night, feeling the wind. Maybe if he saw that I loved someone else, Calvin would give up. He would go on with his own life instead of accommodating me. Suddenly, a warmth and a familiar woody perfume came from behind me. I looked down and saw a broad coat draped over my shoulders. It was Calvin who had caught up. Where's your boyfriend? Did he go back first? I couldn't tell much emotion from his voice, but it still revealed his eagerness. I lowered my head and didn't answer immediately. I just nodded silently under the streetlight. I looked up at him. The warm yellow light made his eyebrows and eyes especially gentle. For a moment, under his gaze, I felt as if we had returned to the time when we were in the game. Finally, I slowly spoke. Peach, for some people and some things, it's enough to have them briefly, right? Jacob fell silent again. He clenched the corner of his clothes, but his eyes still couldn't help but turn red. I bit my lower lip tightly to keep myself from showing any weakness. After a long time, I heard Jacob sneer, that's great. Remember to tell me when you get married, and I'll give you a big red envelope. I stared at him blankly, feeling mixed emotions in my heart. The helplessness revealed in Jacob's words made my chest feel bitter. Silence surrounded us again. I seemed to hear his soft sigh and the sound of the distance between us growing farther and farther. He must be very good to you, right? Yeah, he's pretty good to me. You'll be happy, right? You must be happy. Towards the end, I even felt the suppressed sobbing in Jacob's voice. I held back the surging sadness in my heart and forced my tears back. After a long, long time, I finally nodded gently again. Yeah, I will be. Calvin finally saw me off to the car. He waved at me, and I said goodbye to him. Looking at his figure getting smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror, I couldn't help but sob. How many more times would we be able to see each other? But I didn't expect that that day would be the last time we met. From that day on, I never saw Calvin again. The faint light in that private room on the second floor never turned on again. The gardenias were always replaced with fresh ones, and the bar was still bustling with activity every day. I often sat there and ordered a glass of peach wine. The waiters all knew me. They didn't ask any more questions but just silently brought the wine to me. I took a sip. The sweet taste reminded me of Calvin. He always looked at me with a smile, his eyes full of affection and tenderness, and now I could only search for those memories in this glass of wine until that waiter found me and took me to that private room on the second floor. Only when he took out a letter did I understand. Calvin had already left. I opened the letter with trembling hands, and it was filled with dense words. Camille, seeing these words is like seeing you. I didn't know how to leave you with my last memory, so I decided to use this method. Forgive my decision. I should still return to the place where I belong, although I'm reluctant. I think you already knew that the deal for me to come to the real world was that you couldn't recognize me. How many times I wished that you could call out my name, but neither of us dared to take the risk. Forget me, Camille. You know, I'm a character made up of a pile of data, and I will fall into a cycle again and again. You're just a passerby in my life. I will meet the next one. Thousands and thousands of others. It's not worth it for you to keep remembering me all the time. So, Camille, forget me. You must definitely forget me, of course. Before the next cycle starts, I will always love you. My hand holding the letter kept shaking. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I quickly wiped them away. I reached out and gently stroked the sofa that Calvin had leaned on. It seemed that his warmth still remained there. I knew that this was the reality that Calvin had to face. It was also the reality that I had to face. I got up and walked to the window, looking at the bustling crowd and traffic outside, but in my heart, I felt an unprecedented emptiness. Calvin had left, and it seemed that the color had also left my life. The ringing of my phone suddenly interrupted the silence. I answered the phone and instinctively wanted to ask, Judy, do you know Calvin? Calvin, who's that? So Calvin had really left. No one remembered him except me. I sat by the window, staring blankly at the world outside. Calvin had already left. His existence seemed to be just a memory of mine alone. At that moment, I understood what it meant to have a heartache like being stabbed on the street that I was most familiar with. The game tester called me on the street that I was most familiar with. I squatted down and burst into tears. Camille, Calvin activated the self-destruction mode. The system didn't detect it in time this time. Calvin is gone. The call ended, and I tightly clutched the letter. It turns out that when people experience great sorrow, they may even lose the ability to hear sounds. I squatted on the street, put that letter close to my heart, and cried loudly without restraint. Calvin said that he would always love me before the next cycle started, so there would never be a next cycle. Calvin's side story. My name is Calvin. I am the protagonist in a game, a character to be courted. It was only after I came to what people here call the real world that I understood. For people in the real world, I'm just a pile of data. I can't explain why I came here. I could only hide my identity for the time being and think about taking one step at a time. I don't know which way my life will go, but I know why I'm here. It's all for one person, just for her, Camille, whom I think about day and night, the person who broke into my life, left an indelible mark, and then disappeared in front of me. On that day, she vanished from my life. I reached out, trying to grab her, but all that passed through my hands was the wind. I don't know how long I was in a daze after she left, and I even felt that life had lost its meaning. I came to the bridge that we had walked across together, standing beside it and looking at the bottomless sea. For the first time, I had the impulse to give up my life, because I couldn't find the meaning of life. I even felt that I didn't have a future life at all. My life was always only depicted in this period. I stepped onto the guardrail beside me, ready to jump off, but at this moment, time stood still. The vehicles and pedestrians all stopped. A mechanical voice rang out in my mind. Attention, attention, level 1 alert. The character is attempting self-destruction. Then the system told me everything. Why Camille had appeared here, why she had disappeared, those things that couldn't be understood and couldn't be explained by common sense. At this moment, I got all the answers. Then where is she now? The player has safely returned to the real world. Can I go there? The system fell silent. I thought I would never get an answer, so I smoked my first cigarette in my life. After being evaluated by the system, you can be allowed to meet her, but she can't recognize you, and you must unconditionally cooperate when the system needs you to come back. Once she recognizes you, you will be automatically destroyed. You will cease to exist in this world. Okay, I agreed without even thinking. Soon, I was teleported to the real world with the only money I had on me. I rented a bar. The decorations were all gardenias that she loved. I thought that one day she would come, and she did come. The moment I saw her push the door open and come in on the second floor, I couldn't take my eyes off her. I watched her talk with her friend, I watched her be absent-minded, I watched her look at the gardenias. I couldn't help but ask the waiter to send her a glass of peach wine. She was very smart and quickly realized something. Camille asked me who I was. Perhaps she still remembered me. It's so good that she didn't forget me, but this meeting was really beyond my expectations. I didn't dare to look up for a long time in the dark. I think I'm a coward, but I forgot that the meaning of gardenias is brave love. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails almost dug into my palms. In the end, I still spoke to her in the most unfamiliar tone and attitude with cold words and then fled in a hurry. At the corner, I saw her walking out looking lost. Her back was indescribably lonely. I wanted to rush up and tell her everything, but I couldn't. If I got acquainted with her, I would never be able to see her again. I still want to see her live a wonderful life. Camille's life can go on without me, but her life can't be without happiness. After that day, she came to this bar every day, and I watched her from the private room on the second floor through the faint light. I saw her being lonely, and I saw her being happy. Sometimes she was alone with a glass of peach wine, sometimes she was with 2 or 3 friends. She was living her own life well, but Camille didn't know that glass of peach wine was only sold to her. I originally thought that our lives would only be like this, but I didn't expect that she took the initiative to find me. Looking at her familiar face, I suddenly felt scared. I didn't dare to respond to the hand that Camille extended for a long time. I'm really a coward, but Camille's love was too passionate. When I heard her call me Peach, the indifference I had pretended to have melted away in an instant. She gave me a reason to stay by her side. Reasonably, when I saw her being sad or angry, I would instinctively choose to accompany her to solve all the problems. This kind of life went on for a long time until one day, I received a message from the system. It was urging me to go back quickly. Just then, I saw Camille coming in with a man on her arm. I knew that this day wouldn't be too late to come, but at this moment, I still couldn't help but laugh at myself. When I saw her smiling at him and snuggling up to him, I would wonder why that person wasn't me. I went up to them. When she talked to me, there was somehow a bit of a sarcastic tone. Was she angry, or was it her resistance to me as a friend? When they walked past me, the emotions I had been holding back reached their peak. I chased after them regardless of everything. On the sparsely populated street, there was only her thin and lonely back. Where was her boyfriend? I wanted to walk with her for a while. It turned out that Camille had already known the news that I was going back. It's just that she didn't say it, and I didn't ask. By the light of the street lamps, at countless inadvertent moments and in countless sidelong glances, I looked at her again and again. I tried to deeply engrave every move of hers in my mind. I wanted to calm myself down, but I still couldn't control the sobbing in my voice. Finally, I saw her off to the car. In my sight, she got smaller and smaller as the car drove away. I couldn't see her anymore. I silently shed a tear on the empty street. I thought this was the last time I would see her. When I got back to the bar, I wrote a letter, and then I returned to the so-called game world. I began to resist the tasks given to me by the system and came alone to a seaside town at the edge of the world. The people here always had kind smiles on their faces. I bought a house with a yard and adopted many stray animals. They chirped in my ears all day long, and life wasn't too boring. Then it separated again, reflecting Brian's arrogant appearance. What is she doing now? I can't get any news about her. And her news will never reach me either. But later, the animals left me one after another, and I was still like the sea, with no end in sight. I didn't adopt any more animals. The system started to forcibly control my consciousness, making me return to the way I was before. But I promised Camille that I would always love her before the next cycle. I came to the seaside as I used to. Would she like the sea? I think she would. If there is a next life, I hope to be a real person. I want to hold her hand openly and walk beside her. But if I had known that the ending would still be like this, I might as well have hugged her one last time. I sank into the sea and lost all consciousness. I disappeared from this world, or rather, I was never in this world at all. My regret is that I didn't get to say to her in the end, Camille, I love you. Data self-destruction, success, comma, end of the full text.